on the line. It's one thing if we're wrong, but there's a delay there.
A yellow strip or a blue strip or something?
I don't know. It's on the big screen.
Here and on the other side? Okay. This one is dark, like I've tripped on it. Oh, yeah. Like 3 times. Because I can't see in the dark. The wheels gonna go? I know, it's very close, yeah. That would be awful.
What are they?
Perfect.
Are they,
I'm going to push you off your chair off to the side here. Give us all a little more room.
Puppies maybe.
Is he here tonight?
I need to get my skills some new shoes.
Oh, there he is. Is he out of town?
It's the library. The library. That's right.
The big seat.
You want to move this?
So I found out what part of the problem is with
I don't know, it's over there.
the phone call
It's not your way.
was that second.
Bill, how we doing?
Was been working on all of it, was coming back from his cruise.
Oh, Bill, someone asked me,
And, right.
and this is somebody I don't think knows that much about trees. I wanted to know why we planted a big tree right between the staircase and the front door against the wall
I had to stay in a hotel in Italy,
of the firehouse.
quarantine,
Yeah,
and they both bought it.
wow. I said, I don't know.
Anyway, they're working on it.
It looks,
all
I mean, when I drove by, it's staircase here, front door here.
When do your kids finish school?
Friday.
Yeah.
Friday.
I'll
That-
teach
that-
us finish Thursday.
He's a lucky man.
Yeah, I'm bringing
When's Broward out? Next week?
Oh, 2 weeks.
2 weeks more.
2 very long, long weeks. The
Did your
long
kids-
boys and every other kid in the
So
world running around.
The Palm Beach County School District starts at like the 10th.
We started
And again,
earlier.
and it's again next year again, the 10th.
We're starting later for Anderson because they're opening a new school. So they're trying to get the maximum time, so they pushed it back an extra week. So
Oh,
we don't
okay.
start till the 25th or something.
Recording in progress.
It's all 180 days, but, you
Yeah.
know,
How many people?
the end of the year, you're ready.
Yeah, one thing is cool is there's a teacher retiring after 40 years.
Everybody ready?
Favorite couple of
Waiting for DJ Laz, yeah.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the regular Lighthouse Point City Commission meeting for May 24th, 2022. We'll be utilizing a hybrid format, utilizing communications technology via the Zoom virtual meeting platform and also in person. Mayor Van Buskirk, would you lead us in the invocation, please?
Please bow your head. Heavenly Father, as we gather here this evening to transact the business of the city, we ask your guidance so that our actions reflect what is best for our entire community. Help us to keep an open mind so we can listen to others in order to make informed decisions on the matters before us this evening. Please remind us to be honest and fair. We ask that you bestow your wisdom, strength, and grace on our city officials, staff members, and residents who are here to work together for the people of Lighthouse Point. We ask you to remind us to treat everyone with dignity, respect, patience, and justice. We ask for your protection and guidance for our country in these trying times and for the citizens of Lighthouse Point and the United States. Dear Lord, I also want to add, please watch over those 14 family members today from the Senseless Act in Texas. They remain in our thoughts and our prayers. We thank you for the privilege and the opportunity of serving you. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mayor Van Buskirk. We'll call the meeting to order and ask people to stand for the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
Under God, indivisible,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Mayor Van Buskirk,
Here.
Commission President Joffe,
Here.
Commission Vice President Johnson,
Here.
Commissioner Long,
Here.
Commissioner Petrone,
Here?
Commissioner Marshall,
Here.
City Attorney Cirillo,
Here.
City Administrator Levisky,
Here.
Finance Director Olympio, Assistant Chief Long, Library Director Keys,
Here.
Police Chief Licata. Public Works Director Schramm.
Here.
Recreation Director Word. All's accounted for.
All right.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Madam Clerk. The first item on our agenda are a series of presentations by the mayor. We have a proclamation for Miss Teen Lighthouse Point for Emergency Medical Services Week, National Police Week, Public Works Week, and Code Enforcement Week, in no particular order. So, Mayor Van Buskirk.
Tasha, if you'd like to come on up. We'll obviously start with you, there's no doubt about it. I just wanted to thank you for reaching out, actually, and sending me an email. And actually, when I saw you in the parade, I actually didn't understand that we had on this point, but it's an honor, and we're really excited for you and wish you the best of luck. So here's a proclamation. Whereas Natasha Conti serves the greater Fort Lauderdale area as Miss Lighthouse Point USA. And whereas Natasha is the official hometown delegate for the Miss Florida Teen USA pageant. Whereas Natasha will be representing our city and surrounding area at the 70th anniversary Miss Florida USA, Miss Florida Teen USA competition on May 27th through May 29th, 2022. And whereas Ms. Natasha was raised in Lighthouse Point as a community, we are proud to support her endeavors toward being Miss Teen Florida USA. Now, therefore, I, Kyle Van Busker, through the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Lighthouse Point, do hereby recognize Miss Lighthouse Point Teen USA.
Thank
You can come up, it's okay. I mean, you gotta go through the crowd, I'm sure, but it's okay. Thank you. Well, listen, good luck.
Thank you so much.
Very good. Congratulations again, that's awesome. And we look forward to hearing from you on how you did, okay?
Thank you so much.
No problem. All right. Moving on to the rest of the stack, I'll go ahead, like Commissioner Duffy says, I'll shuffle them up. See, we got, oh, code enforcement. Tony. Come on up, Tony.
Come on down.
All right. You didn't bring your other two cohorts with you? All right. Well,
They left me all alone.
they left you all alone. It says a lot about the two of them, except for that Jim Tony guy. All right. This is another proclamation. This is Code Enforcement Week. Actually, it's kind of interesting. Everything seems to be this 1 week or over this month. It's a week of every one of them. So, whereas code enforcement officers provide for the safety, health, and welfare of the citizens in the community through the enforcement of building, zoning, housing, animal control, environmental, and other codes and ordinances. And whereas code enforcement officers are often not credited for the jobs that they do in saving lives, improving neighborhoods, as emergency personnel such as police, fire, and emergency medical services. And whereas every day, assisted by support and program staff, they attempt to provide quality customer service to the public for the betterment of the community. And whereas too many times their efforts go unnoticed, I laughed at that because it's true, ever after code compliance has been accomplished due to their efforts and expertise. And whereas code enforcement officers are dedicated, well-trained, and highly responsible individuals who take their job seriously and provide for their department and the local government within which they serve. And whereas the Florida Association of Code Enforcement Officers, FACE, has declared the first week of June to be set aside by local governments to honor and recognize their code enforcement officers. Now, therefore, I, Kyle Van Busker, through the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Lighthouse Point, do hereby proclaim the week of June 6th through 10th, 2022 as Code Enforcement Officers Appreciation Week. Thank you very much, Tom. Congratulations.
Thank you.
With our large social media presence, we'll definitely have Tony front and center on. All right, moving on. Public Works, Chuck. Fine solo too. I can't believe that those 10 left you here all by yourself. Oh, well, I don't like it. All right, so proclamation for Public Works. Whereas public works services provided in our community are an integral part of our citizens' everyday lives. And whereas the support of an understanding and informed citizenry is vital to the efficient operation of public works systems and programs such as water, sewer, streets, and highways, public buildings, solid waste collection, parks, and canal maintenance. And whereas the health, safety, and comfort of the community greatly depends on these facilities and services. And whereas the quality of and effectiveness of these facilities, as well as the planning, design, and construction is vitally dependent on the efforts and skill of public works officials. And whereas the efficiency of the qualified and dedicated personnel who staff Public Works Department is materially influenced by the people's attitude and understanding of the importance of the work they perform. And now, therefore, I, Kyle Van Busker, through the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Lighthouse Point, do hereby proclaim the week of May 15th to 21st as National Public Works Week. All right, Chief, Chief Long, which one is coming up? Which chief? I said chief. There's so many chiefs that jumped up there. All right. No, you can come on in. You're our community service police. If anybody hasn't met Matt, he's our community service police officer. He is out there going around. We see him here. He does all our commission meetings. He'll be at our summer camp, all around keeping all of our youth in the right lanes. Let's put it that way. When I mean the right lanes, I mean on the sidewalk. All right, whereas the Congress and the President of the United States have designated May 15th as Peace Officers Memorial Day, and a week in which it falls as Police Week, and whereas the members of law enforcement agencies of Lighthouse Point play an essential role in safeguarding the rights and freedoms of citizens of Lighthouse Point, and whereas it is important that all citizens know and understand the problems, duties, and responsibilities of their police department. And the members of our police department recognize their duty to serve the people by safeguarding life and property, by protecting them against violence or disorder, and by protecting the innocent against deception and the weak against oppression or intimidation. And whereas the police department of Lighthouse Point has grown to be a modern and scientific law enforcement agency, which increasingly provides a vital public service. Now, therefore, I, Kyle Van Busker, through the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Lighthouse Point, call upon all citizens of Lighthouse Point and upon all patriotic, civil, and education organizations to observe the week of May 15th through the 21st, 2022 as National Police Week. Chief. Perfect. All right, Chief Long, Miles, stand on up here. Should have brought a bottle of water up here to start off with. Well, again, just in case everybody knows, this week the fire chief and the fire and fire department are doing their every 3 to 5 year ISO rating testing and putting together on why they're such a highly qualified fire department, and shows us where we rank on the national averages and to our local departments. So great job. All right. Whereas the emergency medical professionals and volunteers provide medical care to victims of sudden life-threatening injuries and illnesses, and must rapidly assess, manage, and effectively provide care in unpredictable situations requiring life and death judgments. And whereas emergency medical personnel provide education, assessment, prevention, and referral services in addition to their emergency activities, and are often the first contact many residents and visitors of Florida have with the healthcare system. And whereas the residents of and visitors of South Florida benefit daily from the efforts and skilled dispatchers, first responders, emergency medical technicians, paramedics, emergency and trauma nurses, educators, emergency and trauma physicians, and support personnel. And it is imperative that general public be made aware of, understand, and effectively use its local emergency medical services system. Now, therefore, I, Kyle Van Busker, by the authority vested in me, as mayor of the city of Lighthouse Point, do hereby proclaim May 15th to 21st, 2022 as Emergency Medical Services Appreciation Week. Thanks. Thank you very much.
Mayor, you need a moment?
Yeah.
The only way
Thank you.
Commissioner Joffe can keep me quiet is to make me speak that long before the start of the meeting.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is the approval of the regular meeting minutes for May 10th, 2022. Commissioners, have you reviewed the minutes?
Yes,
Yes.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
We have a motion approved by Commissioner Johnson, seconded by Commissioner Petrone. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? Motion passes 5-0. Moving on to Treasurer's Report. Finance Director Olympio.
Good evening. Treasurer's Report, May 24th, 2022. General Fund, $7,320,692.71. Cleanup Deposits, $41,800. Garbage and Trash Fund, $1,026,226.84. Special Purpose Funds, $3,079,343.37. Stormwater Utility Fund, $705,549.54. Construction and Debt Service Funds, $3,426,698.66. Reserve for Encumbrances, General Fund, $901,014.12. All other funds, $3,067,426.71. Contingency, $5,842,029.00. Total all funds, $25,410,780.95.
Thank you, Finance Director. Any questions for Ms. Olympio? All right, Commissioner, seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now we move on to public comments and requests regarding agenda items. There are 8 items on our agenda. I can't see the entire gallery, but if anybody in the gallery wants to come up and address any of the agenda items, come forward, state your name and address. You'll be given 3 minutes to speak. If you are on Zoom, go ahead and raise your hand and we'll get to you, but we'll open the floor for public comment and requests regarding agenda items.
And Mr. President, it's Mike Cirillo. Just want to remind folks, item number 6 is the ordinance, a second reading of an ordinance that will be its own public hearing.
Thank you. I don't see anybody coming forward, but someone correct me, because I can only see looking one way. Anybody on Zoom, if they want to raise their hand to participate in public comment and requests regarding agenda items? Madam Clerk, I don't see any hands raised on my end, do you?
No, sir.
Okay. All right. Seeing no one wanting to participate, we'll close public comment requests regarding agenda items. The next item is reports from city administration, and we have an update on the library addition project from City Administrator Levisky. Mr. Levisky.
Yes, sir. Mr. President, Commissioners, this is just an update about the library addition project. And you notice Bill Gallo's in the audience too, so at the end he can answer questions about all the projects that we have going, the bond projects. But the site plan went to the Community Appearance Board, and it recommended approval to the Planning and Zoning Board. The site plan subsequently went to the Planning and Zoning Board, and they also approved it, the site plan. They did have some serious concerns about the parking issue, because we're adding 1,800 square feet, and not adding any parking. Actually, we're losing 13 parking spaces that are in the existing municipal parking lot. But what we've done to offset some of that, the 6 parking spaces that are on 38th Street, those pull-in, pull-out parking, we've marked those municipal parking only, and for years they've been used by the condominiums across the street. So we really kind of took those spaces back. So we're done with the boards, with the 2 boards. The architect has completed the construction documents. They're going through final review. They are complete, but they're doing a QC check, so they send it back to other architects. They're sending it to all their subcontractors, the engineers, and so they're getting them all wrapped up. The RFP has been prepared, so that's ready to go. What we're going to do is, as soon as the construction documents are completed, we're going to send them to the building department. We're going to have the building department do a cursory review. to see if there's any things that should be added or anything that's missed or needs to be changed. And what will that do, it'll make it easier later when we come back in for permitting. So after that is done, then we'll put the project out to bid. And that's the plan right now, put it out to bid. And what that does too is have the building department look at it now, it lessens the chance of change orders later when we get a contractor on board. So once that's done, the comments are made, the architects will make the changes, and then we'll put it out to bid. Probably takes 3 to 4 months for that whole process. And if we don't hear anything different this evening, the plan is to go ahead and continue with the project and put it out to bid. But the Planning and Zoning Board they wanted to make it clear that they are concerned about the parking, and they wanted that specifically brought up to the City Commission. That's my report.
Commissioner Long, I saw your hand go up.
Yeah, just a couple questions. I mean, since this is part of the bond issue, we've seen a conceptual drawing at best, right at the beginning, which was just like, hey, we could do this. Are we going to be able to see this plan before it goes all the way down the road?
Before we put it out to bid, we can show you what it looked like, the exterior elevations, what it looks like, and what went to the Community Appearance Board.
I mean, I'd like to see the elevation, I'd like to see also the layout. And with parking, does that include any parking we're going to gain when the fire station closes and we move it over?
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. It doesn't consider that at all. I don't know if that final decision has been made about whether the fire station gets demolished or another building gets.
But just the fact that you wouldn't have, our fire staff using those parking spots over there.
We explained that to the Planning and Zoning Board, that, in the morning, you got 6 people coming on duty. You got 6 people who were on duty, so that's a combination of 6 extra cars in the morning. So now all the firefighters will be at the new fire station, and that was brought up to the board. But they still wanted to bring up concerns that they had a concern about parking.
Okay, one more question. And the concept we talked about is, having it so it's like a separate entryway that we could still be connected to the library, but still have a separate entrance for night events and things like that. I mean, from a programming point of view, what will this be?
It's 1,800 square feet that shoots out to the north of the property. There's a little tunnel, like a breezeway, that goes from the existing library through the breezeway into the new addition. One thing, I think it was talked about here at the City Commission, that the elevation, the FEMA flood elevation is different for this building than it is out in the parking lot, and there's a 2-foot differential. Initially, we thought that building was going to be raised 2 feet, and we would have had a ramp that went from this building up to get to that additional elevation of 2 feet. The way the architects had it designed initially was, let's say, a mom and dad with a baby stroller in the library, if they wanted to go to the new addition, they would have to go outside into the elements on a sidewalk and then go into the new building. And we just found that unacceptable. So the building official actually brought up the idea of you could do flood barriers. I don't know if that's the right term, but what we can do is the architect is designing the building that it's going to be at the same finished floor elevation as existing library. So we're going to get rid of that. We're going to get rid of that ramp. What they have to do is they got to beef up the building a little bit to make it more flood proof, and they have like barriers they put in front of the doors if we are considering if a flood is imminent, or we could have a chance of getting a flood. They put these devices in front of the doors that will keep the flood water from coming in.
Mostly a Cat 5 building?
No, it's not a Category 5 building. No, sir. We did it for the community center because it was going to be an additional shelter for after the fact for the police officers.
Okay.
Could you just review for me what's going to happen in that room? What was proposed to be in that room?
Commissioner, I prefer if the library director gives you that information. She's here, if that's okay.
Sure.
It's for programs.
Good evening.
Nice to see everybody in person. The room that we're talking about, the 1,800 square feet, would take the place of the current 800 square foot children's room that we have. That 1,800 square feet is going to be determined on what we furnish it with and how we lay it out. Basically, it's a box. Is that a fair assessment? No. It's a box. If we put in mobile shelving, we would be able to move shelving to the side, have huge story times in there. I sent out emails to everybody. Our children's programs are full. So I know that moving forward, a situation like that would enable us to have certain programming in the children's room along with the collections. The current room that the children's collection is in right now could be turned into a learning lab or a larger programming room for messier projects like STEAM labs.
I only ask that because people ask me that with Dixon all across the way, and then with the possibility that the fire station is going to stay there and not go away, do we need another whole room here for all this money that it's going to end up costing us? And I think that we'll have to wait and see possibly when the prices and all come in, but it seems like we have Dixon all across the way that I don't know that we use it that much, and I'm not sure how much we use it, but...
When we did the original analysis for the community center, the Dixon Hall was heavily used by outside nonprofit groups, including the Sea Scouts, the Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts, the Coast Guard, and it was heavily used by those groups. In addition, the city used it for training purposes, and the library used it also for certain CDBG classes. The children's room is basically, we are giving the youth of the community a larger space to spread out in. If you've been in the children's room, there's 3 tables. If you come in after school, they're full. This would give them a lot more room to spread out in. Additionally, it would be a noise buffer between the children's room and the adult area, just for the comfort of our seniors and adults.
Christy, about how many kids are in an average event that you have?
Because,
program.
well, right now, because we do not have Dixon Hall, I have 15, and that's running out of a 300 square foot meeting room. In the past, pre-pandemic, when we had Dixon Hall, we had 30, 40 really max. That's for a children's event. For seniors, we might have a bit more.
30 or 40 events?
No, 30, or the question was, how many children do we have in a program?
That's after school, or do you have programs in the daytime for?
We have
that aren't-
story time STEAM coming up in June, story time STEAM labs, makerspace labs, children's watercolor, adult
But
watercolor.
that's a summer program.
Correct, but
Right.
those were run throughout the year prior to the pandemic.
Oh, they were? When, in the evenings?
They were run after school,
Oh.
some in the mornings, some in the evening, when we were open one night a week.
Christy, how many programs did you run out of Dixon Hall that now potentially could be in this particular room?
That's a great question. I would put it down to the fact that the collections would be in there. So something like story time or a makerspace crafts, absolutely, it could be in that room and give us a little bit more room than the 300 square feet. Something like watercolor, I wouldn't really want the water by the collection, or the STEAM labs, which tend to be a little messy. Something like coding could be run out of there with our robots that the Friends donated.
What is STEAM Lab?
STEAM lab is science, technology, engineering, arts,
Oh.
and math.
Oh, STEM.
Mhm.
Oh.
That's STEAM, yeah.
They call it-
We put arts in there for,
And why aren't we using, I'm sorry, why aren't we using Dixon Hall now?
right now, the Public Works Department is housed out of there. Both of their
So all the
buildings are
offices
being
are there?
constructed, and
And when's that timeline on that?
There's some in
That's
there,
a question for Bill.
So I was kind of looking all over.
right there, the guru.
When's Public Works going to be able to move out of Dixon Hall and to their new building?
July.
Of 22? You gotta ask,
Good question.
folks, you gotta ask. And will you be open on Saturdays?
We spoke about this morning. Right now, as most of you know, my staff, I have 2 new people and 1 position still waiting for the person to come on board. They have been here 7 weeks and 6 weeks, so myself and Kathy Anthony have been running everything. With that said, we're shooting for the week of June 13th to have a night and then add on a Saturday.
Okay, 'cause I do think, especially when you talk about the kids, that Saturdays are important as well.
Right, and I understand that.
Yes.
However-
Parents that work with the kids.
However, our children's librarian does not even come on board until June 6th.
Okay, well, I mean, my concern is we build this building, we either don't have staffing or it's not open at hours that it's really going to be convenient for parents with small children or even junior high and high school kids who need the library for different things.
I would say if you look pre-pandemic, that wouldn't be the case. We had a double whammy at the library, and I think that other departments are having this now also. We had the pandemic hit us, and then as soon as we were ready to get up and going, 3 of the 5 staff members resigned and moved to other states. We've been very fortunate to refill those positions, but it does take time to get people in and processed and to find the right person for this community, not just a person.
Any other questions for Christie?
When you say, is it one Saturday a month or will it be every Saturday?
No, it's every Saturday.
And will it be all day or just mornings? Or?
Prior to the pandemic, we had 10 to 2 on Saturdays. That's the goal, is to hit our pre-pandemic hours.
Okay.
1 night a week till 8, Saturdays 10 to 2.
And what night were you going to do it?
That's a great question. Prior to the pandemic, we did Tuesdays.
Right.
Because of the traffic from people coming in for the commission meetings, one of the items that the Planning and Zoning Board brought up was me looking at another night. Based on that, we will be open more than likely Thursdays. I am not saying 100%, but more than likely it will be Thursday nights. That will enable us to kind of juggle traffic and parking a little bit better.
Any other questions for Mr. Levinsky or Christie on any of the bond projects? Mr. Gallo's here, so now's the chance. All right. Don't see any other questions.
No questions from Jason?
I can barely speak,
Oh,
so. So, the one thought I had was, and it sounds like it doesn't save us any money, is things aren't getting any cheaper, so the delay in putting it out to bid gives me some concern, but I guess I'd rather avoid the possible change orders later on, but that was my one thought, but it doesn't sound like there's any way around that. So, that was the only comment I had. All right, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on, there are no department reports. There are no reports from the city attorney. No reports from standing committees. Planning and zoning is meeting June 7th. Code enforcement, June 21st. Community appearance, June 16th. Special magistrate, June 1st. Marine advisory, August 4th. Moving on to our agenda items, we had a request, commissioners, to move agenda item number 5 to first on our agenda. Is there any objection to doing that?
Before you get there, could we have a question about department reports?
Oh, sure, of course. Go for it.
Chuck? One, very happy the way the 22nd Avenue, 25th lift station came out. Thanks for putting all the grass back. Neighbors haven't been too upset. I wish that someone would water more, but thank you on that. Wondering if we have an update on The 25th Street, they're still waiting for parts, I see, but do we have an idea? One, the lift station over at 41st, why it's, not fully signed off yet. We had talked about that generator that they were trying to put in there and said that we have little control. Now, then what can we do as far as landscaping is concerned? Has there been any update on that? And I guess the first thing to talk about is the project along 39th and I guess 21st in that area. I was back there today and almost got killed because they have one side of the road open, the one that goes west. And as I went in there to cross the road, cross Federal Highway to go over to Wawa, I saw 3 cars, not one, 3 cars turn left from Federal Highway and use the turn lane, the westbound, or in this case, southbound turn lane. And as I'm telling them, stop, 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 they went anyway, and one person, of course, flipped me off, but there was a car coming behind me that was trying to take that left and kind of got pushed off into my lane for that. And I don't know what we could do other than talking to, whoever's doing this work, that probably both sides have to be cut off, as bad as that sounds, but I saw 3 cars do this in just the short time I was there. It seemed like a regular thing, but they were going basically eastbound in the westbound lanes. And wondering if we'd
Be
be
making a
able-
left turn southbound Federal,
They were
and
southbound
the barricades are there, so they're,
Yep, and, me, I was already parked, because I was going straight across, but the other one was coming up on me, and when he saw a car coming, hit the horn and kind of came over to the right, but, as I'm waiting, it's happened with 3 cars. So, I don't know what they were thinking by leaving one side of it open, and I know they had trenched and were filling, but
they left that side open to allow egress for the condominiums. Their public information office touched base with, I think it's Lighthouse Gardens North, and they have a north exit from their condo, kind of over by, towards Vintage. But that's inconvenient for some of the folks that live on the south side of that, and the people who live on the north side of Lighthouse Gardens South. So that was the negotiation, to leave the westbound open, controlling the people making a left and going against oncoming traffic. I'll bring that up to the contractor tomorrow, and
I just couldn't, and I was trying to figure out how you could do this safely without cutting the thing off.
So,
I couldn't come up with anything, but.
And their barrels closing off the left turn lane from Federal Highway.
Yes,
So
and they were
people are
just
making
pulling
a
up in
left
front of it.
Through lane.
Once the light turns, they kind of pull up in front of it, and people hit the horn saying, what are you doing? And, first guy was there, second guy flipped me off, and third one just followed everybody else. And I'm sure it's happening all the time, as long as that's open, because this guy looked like he had, yeah, I do this all the time, don't tell me what I can't do.
Right.
As I'm waving like, no! So.
Just didn't want to go around the block, because the detours to go around the block really aren't that bad.
Yeah.
They've really done a pretty decent job of accommodating, especially the folks that have the off-street parking for the condos. I saw them, they place a piece of pipe, they backfill the pipe, and they get at least some rocky fill up to the asphalt elevation before they put the next piece in, because they're blocking 3 cars while they do that, and it takes about 20, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And then they're moving along. They've made it past 39th Street, they've made the turn, so I'll talk to them about their MOT tomorrow. The thing is, they're still moving heavy equipment around the site, so I'll express that to them, that being closed is better than being open, have an unsafe situation.
Yeah. And any updates on the other lift station and it's being finalized out with the generator? Aesthetically, we're kind of referring to that.
Right, so the last update from the county, and this is of 2 weeks ago, they're looking at special generator machinery that can separate a belly tank from the actual generator itself. They're talking about doing an underground tank or an in-ground tank and trying to fit it in the site that they have, because the church rejected their request for an easement to place the unit over there and then just do an underground power to the station. So they're still working on it. So they don't have a permanent solution yet, and they have told me they'll be at the commission meeting. When they have this sorted out, they will come here. They're talking about August.
Okay, I'd still like to see what we can, we could get them to commit to as far as landscaping, improved visibility of, improved, hedges, whatever,
Shading
screening.
lights, of course.
That we can do around there because it is just industrial and ugly.
That'll be the time, yes, sir.
And I think also, we just need to keep, sorry to interrupt, Mike, it's hard for me to tell, but we need to, it sounds like to me, the county is in an unfortunate position where they can't get this lift station that they spent a bunch of money on that benefits our city going without this generator. Is that correct?
The lift station is functioning.
I thought last time it wasn't, I thought it couldn't be, I thought they couldn't turn it on. I thought it wasn't functional, and we were waiting for it to be functional before we could start beautifying it. So it is working now?
The lift station functions, they just haven't hooked up the force main that the phase one of the force main they installed a few months ago yet. They can't hook that up until they have this generator situation squared away.
Okay, all right, so I understand that a little bit better. And I guess that, but my other point is, I think we need to keep a tight leash on what their solution is to make sure it isn't worse than what we already have there now. That's my concern, that they come up with a solution and they kind of just execute on it, or just don't get any input from us on what it's going to do to that general area. Because it sounds like you're telling me now, or telling us now, that they're limited to the current site of where the lift station is.
That's correct.
Okay. So it's going to be, they're going to come to us first with the solution, right? And say, hey, here's our solution.
When they have something, they thought by sometime in August, they'll have some renderings that they can bring to the commission for review.
Okay. Sorry, Mike, I didn't mean to cut you off. It's hard to see if you're done or not.
If I can, to add to Chuck's comments, Greg Balicki said they've come back in about 60 days. They have a vendor that they're trying to get on the list for Broward County to be an approved vendor. They want that vendor to be approved. They're going to come back in about 60 days. This was probably about 10 days ago. And they're going to have elevations. They're going to have pictures. They're going to show you what they're planning, or what they're proposing to do to the lift station, and they want your input. But that's what they're planning to do. They're going to give you a presentation about what's going to happen to the lift station. So Chuck's time frame of August is probably correct, yes.
John, did they not know that they had to have this generator when they started this project, or they did know that?
My understanding is they did not know it, and by the time the project started and by the time the project ended, they had a different group of people up there at the state, and they decided that a generator was required. And right now, according to Mr. Balicki, he says that they're making them put in a generator. Absolutely. Now they're trying to, the generator could be 12 foot tall, and that would be an eyesore. So they're trying to figure out a way to split the bladder tank from the generator itself, maybe even underground it a little bit. But I mean, as far as nothing's happening, they really are trying to get this resolved. It's doesn't seem like it, but it is on the top of their list. They know exactly your frustration with what's happening.
Do we have any other sites in the city that we're going to have to go through the same thing again?
Not to my knowledge, because the size of that one, the other ones have transfer switches, and they're not that's considered a master pump station.
Okay.
The other ones are basic lift stations. They all lift to gravity that goes into that station.
Okay. But because of the size of this one, the master
That's
is
correct.
generators.
And so, Commissioner Long, you asked about the 25th Ave interconnect.
Yep.
That is correct. There was a pre-construction meeting 2 weeks ago, and they still don't have a start date because they're waiting on materials.
Okay.
And as soon as they get materials, they'll let me know, and they'll want to start. They are eager to start that. And those traffic separators, the little plastic bollards around the corner, the contractor still has to pick those up.
Okay.
Guys with the lift.
So overall, I thought the landscaping looked good, the sidewalk, everything's nice and smooth, it's clean. It looks like they did a really good job there.
Yes, sir. Was there anything else?
Anything else for any of the department heads? All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Chuck. Okay, moving on to our agenda items. We had a request commissioners to move agenda item number 5 up to number 1. Is there any objection to that? Not hearing any. So we'll move to agenda item number 5. Is a motion to approve a proposal for emergency repairs to the Alamanda Waterway, bridge number 867207, City Administrator Labisky.
Yes, sir, Mr. President, Commissioners, you're well aware that when the bridge consultant was surveying Alamanda Bridge, that they saw beam 2 had severe corrosion and damage. So on April 6th, you approved a work order with Kimley Horn to develop construction plans to make the emergency repairs. So Kimley Horn did that, the plans were finished, and they were sent out to several companies. I'm thinking 6 or 7 companies were requested to submit a proposal, and the city received proposals from 2 of the companies. Cohn & Graham, which is the company that did the emergency repair on the Sample Road Bridge for us. They came in at $398,230. Burkhart Construction submitted a proposal for $155,180. So we had our consultant look at the proposal from Burkhart, and it meets all the specifications, so they're obviously qualified to do the work. Burkhart is the construction company that did our work on our roundabout and our Sample Road medians, so they have a lot of experience working with the city. In fact, Brandon Rhodes is here. He worked for Burkhart back then. He was a youngster, and he's a Lighthouse Point resident, so it's nice to see him again after about 17 years. So anyway, we're recommending that the City Commission adopt a motion approving a proposal from Burkhart Construction for the emergency repairs of the bridge, and he authorized Mayor Van Buskirk to enter into the agreement and authorize the expenditure of funds. The design phase was $24,840, and that was from American Rescue Plan Act funding, and this construction phase at $155,180 will come from infrastructure funds. They submitted it, they added in their proposal to mill and resurface the bridge. It's an additional $40,000, and we don't think it's necessary to do that. The engineers don't think it's necessary to do that. They'll just fill the core of the holes. And Brandon is here from Burkhart if you have any questions specifically about the work, and he's got some time frames when they estimate to start and how long the construction would take.
Answers my question on why you're here. I'm like, what is he here for?
How's everyone doing?
Good.
Yeah, just an introduction on Burkhart Construction. I've been working for them for 17 years. Started out with the roundabout and Sample Road improvements, I don't know, 14, 15 years ago, was it, John? I don't know. It was a long time ago.
Long time ago.
Time's flying. But since then, I've been involved in a lot of Pompano Beach work. The Atlantic Boulevard Bridge, I actually was the project manager for that. The improvements with the sail lighting and so on. I'm involved in a little bit more bridge work coming up here with the McNabb Road Bridge coming up in Pompano Beach, and I do a lot of other streetscapes and parks and so on. So definitely, Kyle approached me and we all got together, took a look at the plans, and like I said, I'm looking forward to working with you all, and I'm looking forward to working with the rest of the bridge replacement projects coming up here in the future. Again, I've lived here for a long time, and I know that has been a pressing issue, and it's more and more pressing every day. So anyways, going back to this project, talked to John and Chuck a little bit regarding some scheduling. Once we get the NTP to go ahead and get going, the main thing is just submitting the submittals to Kimley Horn for approvals. Based on what the Kimley Horn time frame, the turnaround time is, my goal is to get started on this, because I know it is an emergency, the middle of June. So, 2-3 weeks from now, I'm looking into getting started. My subcontractor is actually Murray Logan. Murray Logan's a West Palm Beach-based company. We've dealt with them many times. They've actually built the Pompano Beach pier. They were the subcontractor for Whiting Turner. They're giving me 10 to 14 days to finish the job, and then I have a period of time, let's say 30 days, for concrete comprehensive testing, that obviously we need to make sure I'm at 5,500 PSIs before we open up the bridge completely, the road completely. I mentioned the bridge itself. It will be open to pedestrians, to vehicular traffic by one lane at least, just like how it is now. But there is some conversations that I want to have with you all with closing the boating traffic. I know that that's not a main route to go to the intercoastal, it's around the other side. But there is going to be a time where I probably have to shut down some boats. Not to say that big boats can get underneath there anyways, but little whalers and jet skis and so on, they might need to be closed for a little bit. That's one thing that we were kind of thinking through this morning. But if there's any other questions, look forward to working with you all and let you know when we get started.
So roughly, you're looking at about probably 6 weeks from the time you start to the time it's wide open again, roughly?
Yes. Yes, and I'll work with Chuck and John on a schedule, detailed schedule that obviously I'll present to you all, as well as an MOT plan, which is going to be pretty much what you have out there right now. So all that'll be processed and in your hands for review. All right?
When this is complete, will the specs be about the same, the weight limits and everything?
Good question. I'd have to ask Kimley Horn about that. I don't know. Kimley Horn is the one that designed this, and I'm just kind of building what they designed. That's a question for Kimley. I'll be honest with you, I don't know.
While you're working on this, would heavy vehicle traffic create, I realize it's, only one lane is open, but should we limit heavy, concrete
Well,
trucks and
we
stuff?
thought about that. I mean, there's 3 or 4 houses, I think, being built down that one stretch that concrete trucks are going over. I've actually talked to a contractor when I was out there last time building a house, and I mean, I think they're doing what they can to limit the weight, and we're going to do what we can. We're going to have one concrete truck. There's not a lot of concrete to fill our core holes that we're, filling in and restoring that beam. But that's another question that I think Kimley Horn needs to be involved in. They're the engineers. We're going to do our best, but I just don't know what the discussion was or what the thought process was with Kimley Horn. All right.
I have a quick question. Can you just generally explain, like in somewhat layman's terms, what Kimberly Horn is proposing? Because I didn't, we asked them to kind of make the repair or design the repair, but generally, in non-contractor, terms, what is the repair going to be? What is going to be done?
Pretty much, they're just going to encase the existing beam. That beam number 2 is spalling in the concrete. A rebar is exposed. So what they propose us to do is to clean it up, the surfacing, and then we build a form that encompasses the beam, and then we fill it up full of concrete and reinforce it.
Is there any additional rebar? Is there any additional rebar included in that, or I guess is it just designed to kind of surround what's already there and hopefully reinforce it that way?
No, there's rebar. There's rebar too. I'd have to. We can show you the plans, Jason. Definitely. I mean, I can definitely walk you through it.
All right, I was just trying to visualize what exactly is going on, and maybe at some point I'd like to understand it a little bit more, but just kind of conceptually, that's what because I've actually been under there. I don't think you're going to have to worry about much boat traffic, but if we have to officially do it, so be it, because I can barely get under there with a paddleboard. But I was kind of looking around under there and trying to visualize how this actually gets repaired, and I think kind of what you said with kind of encompassing it or encapsulating it is probably all you can really do without redoing the damn thing.
Right. The tricky part is the form that we need to create and build as far as, mounting it underneath the bridge and then having it hold the concrete and so on. That's one thing that obviously is with our submittals that we have to engineer and get approved by Kimley.
Does this beam go parallel with the road, or is it?
It runs parallel with the road, yes. Correct. Anything else?
Well, I'll make a motion. Make a motion to approve the proposal for emergency repairs of the Alameda Waterway, Burkhart Construction for $155,180.
I'll second it.
We have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll go back to the beginning here. Agenda item number 1, continued discussion staying on the bridge topic. Continued discussion on the Kimley Horn Associates work order for bridge inspections. City Administrator Levisky.
Yes, sir. Mr. President, Commissioners, at your last meeting, you discussed and considered approving a work order that was submitted by Kimley Horn Associates to inspect these 7 bridges that was identified at that meeting. At that meeting, you said bring it back in 2 weeks, and you discussed it again. So it's on the agenda at your direction. The amount that they're requesting is $67,230. And the action is a recommendation for the City Commission to discuss the proposed work order and provide direction to City Administration.
Commissioners, further discussion. We discussed this for a while. Commissioner Johnson, I know you had indicated you were trying to work some angles. I know it was a short period of time, but is there anything, maybe kick it off with you, if there's anything else for us to consider from your point of view?
Nothing solid yet. Kyle and I went down there and met with the people at the MPO, and we have a meeting set up with them next week, at which time they're supposed to have come up with some thoughts and some direction for us. I guess they've been slowed down because their second main person went on a nice cruise to Europe, and as time came for them to come home, they both tested positive for COVID, so they've been holed up in a hotel over there for 2 weeks. But now he's back, and so things are functioning there again a little more regularly, so they're working on some ideas for us. And again, you know, we've spoken with Lamar and some of the other county commissioners on things, so we're working on it, and hopefully we'll get some sort of direction, maybe Wednesday when we have our conversation, but as of now, nothing different than 2 weeks ago.
Sandy,
Commissioner?
it'll make,
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
would it make a difference for us to have this report in hand?
Have what?
When we,
report?
to go ahead and approve this, to have Kimberly Horn do this assessment, for then when you have your meeting, then we have both DOT and an outside vendor's report? Do you think that would help
Right, well,
our cause, or?
That's a thought, because I don't know exactly how in-depth Kimley Horn's going to do with their report, and I don't know just how in-depth FDOT did with theirs. Not too deep, because, you know, they didn't pick up the rebar and the cement that's falling apart, but I don't know, does Kimley Horn do any more? I think we saw at one point that they said it was a visual, but then when they talked to us last time, they said no, they were going to get into more details and all, but, I mean, you know, $67,000, but if they could give us something really in-depth, and then we could go to FDOT and say, look, here's your report, here's their report, something's got to give. It's a direction we could go in. And it could be, I would say, fairly immediate, right? If Kimley Horn was going to do it, it would be
Yes, that's
quick.
correct. It'll be quick.
They said
So-
3 months, it says 3 months.
About 3 months.
That's quick in
That's-
Florida.
But I
3
mean,
months.
they would be working on it. It's not 3 months in the future before they would begin.
No, 3
they'd be
months
finished.
should be
They'd
done.
be finished within
Why
3
would
months.
it take that long to
7 bridges?
examine 7 bridges for a big company? Just, I mean, I
Then
don't,
they're going to do the report. A lot of the time is doing the report after the fact. That's how he
Okay.
explained it when he was the first time.
So, Jason?
Go ahead, Mike.
I know we asked the question is, what do you do over and above what DOT did, and he didn't really have a solid answer. He's using the FDOT's bridge inspection reports as the base, and then they're gonna look at it, which DOT did, and they're not doing anything below water. Since we talked, is this the same proposal, word for word, that we had?
They didn't give us an updated proposal.
Okay.
We just gave us,
But I just want to know what they're going to do that DOT did not already do. Because it's not like they're doing, core sampling, they're not doing, x-rays or radar to see, structural issues. And that's my concern. Are we just spending $67,000 for the same thing we got from DOT, which we don't put a lot of faith in anyway? I mean, are they going to notice something that Chuck or anyone else who goes underneath the bridge wouldn't notice, or DOT wouldn't notice? So, I mean, that's my concern. That's why we were kind of hoping for 2 weeks, we'd find out if there's additional things that one who inspects a bridge, and we should probably ask Brandon, he might even know, that we should be doing or looking at prior to investing a lot of money for, this bridge to get the same report we already have.
Do you think we could wait till our next meeting to talk about it again and give us at least more time to work with people to see? I mean, what if we got FDOT to come back and do it all again? Would that not, wouldn't work because we didn't trust what they did the last time?
Well, I guess
That's the thing,
with me, we don't know. We don't know how bridge inspections work or if there's different levels of it. I mean, that's why I was trying to get almost educated on it, and Kimley Horns used the same report that DOT provided.
Right, and John, you said that, I mean, we got that little printout the night here with the names of the bridges, and it said, their physical health and whatever. But you said you have a much more detailed report that FDOT gave you on each bridge.
yeah,
When they did.
each bridge inspection report is very comprehensive. It's not open for public record, so it can't be released,
Right,
except for the front page that gives the rating of it, the sufficiency
Right.
rating and.
but I mean, it wasn't in-depth, it wasn't just what
pictures.
we saw with those quick
No,
little numbers.
it's in-depth, it's got pictures, photos
Right.
of the bridges and explanation. The only thing, I talked to the engineer the next morning, and he just said he was caught by surprise by the questions. He says he'll get in the water and he'll do underwater inspections. I know they said they do sound testing, and I recall what he said was, he's an engineer, so he looks at it from a different perspective, not just identifying what he sees, but then how can it be fixed? So his position, he takes it a step farther than a DOT inspector who's an inspector and not an engineer. And the only thing I can say is I'm just kind of repeating what he told me and what he said at the last commission meeting.
So what would we be getting from him that we didn't get in this detailed report from FDOT?
This initiated from the city commission, because the city commission said you didn't have confidence in the FDOT inspections, or you're less confident. So that's why we asked Kimley Horn to give us a proposal to inspect those 7 bridges, and the commission identified which 7 bridges you were looking at.
I didn't realize at the time, though, that we had a more in-depth report. I thought all we had was that paper that we were given and then the other little pages with the definitions of what everything meant.
I agree.
When we do the repairs from the bridge, FDOT gives us the inspection report, very comprehensive, and we can't release that to the public.
Right.
So we give it to our city engineer, and the city engineer develops construction documents. That's when we go out to bid with all the repairs. So the inspector gives it to our city engineer, and the city engineer develops the construction documents. And Kerry Winningham decides, how the bridge is going to be repaired. And of course, he's an engineer.
Because it's can't get a second opinion. But your doctor tells you one thing, but you go to a specialist to usually get that second opinion. And I'm just wondering, is Kimley Horn a specialist in this field that's going to be over and above what we already have? I mean, we all want great reports, and we all want to know, if we can truly believe the reports we have. I'm just questioning whether we're going to get something different or more comprehensive than we already have.
And are we tied just to Kimberly Horn, or is there companies out there that specialize in bridge reports?
We went
How
through
does that work?
it's the state statute, you got to go through a CC&A process when you hire an architect or an engineer or a survey company. So we went out for an RFQ, request for qualifications, went through the whole process, and we hired Kimley Horn. They were the #1 ranked firm.
Okay.
That's what everything you're doing right now, the hydrographic survey, the stormwater, the seawall survey. And on the other project, we actually have 2 contracts with Kimley Horn, and one is to look at bridges, and they were the most qualified, and the commission awarded Kimley Horn a contract
Okay.
for our bridges.
Okay,
So we didn't find them randomly. You selected them.
okay. All right. Thanks for clarifying that.
Mayor, do you have any, I just feel like it's such a complex and difficult issue, but I have to say, I know no one's doing this intentionally because we all know how important it is, but I just feel like we keep avoiding the issue of our bridges. And I know Sandy and the mayor are working hard with the MPO, but I think we're just going to have to come to grips that somebody professional is going to have to tell us what we're going to do with the bridges. So, Mayor, I don't know if you have any other insight or thoughts on this, but that's what's going through my head, that we're just continuing to kick the can. But I hear what everybody's saying about, what are we getting differently? Do we just proceed with the FDOT recommendation? So I don't want to make it sound like I'm minimizing that, but I almost feel like at this point, all these bridges are going to have to be replaced eventually. I mean, they're 50, 60, 70 years old. And I almost viewed what Kimberly Horn was going to do for the $67,000 was to help us understand perhaps a priority a little bit. I know FDOT kind of gave us that with the ratings, but give us more comfort in the priority that they need to be done. But I'm getting frustrated, not at anybody here, but that we keep kind of kicking the can on these bridges. So, Mayor, anything to add?
I would just say this. To Sandy's point, I know Commissioner Jaffe, myself, and John been trying to get communication with whether it's surtax, whether it's MPO, whether it's at the state level. We talked to people at FDOT at the state level. Everybody keeps saying the same thing. We want to help. We want to get this taken care of, But ultimately, in the end, all these meetings are weeks out, and things happen, and they get continuously moved past this. And ultimately, in the end, is it as a comprehensive report as we want to know, like, hey, this is the bridge you need to replace by 2024. You're going to make this type of bridge, and this will last you 60 years? No. Is there anybody out there that's going to give us that? Probably not. I would beg to differ that there's no one else out there. The reason why we picked Kimberly Horn to do this is because they did the CCNA process and they were the most qualified. So we have, and in my personal opinion, and I think Mike kind of alluded to it already, is it's like a doctor, right? Yeah, we go to a specialist, but ultimately in the end, I saw one cardiologist. I wanted to make sure that cardiologist is right, so I went to see a second cardiologist. And the whole reason why is that they had the same tests and they had the same procedures they could do and they had the same stuff. It's just a different set of eyes on it. And to me, for $67,000, I could walk into any room and any report with a report from Kimberly Horn that's a well-qualified company that I could prove and say, this is what FDOT says, and I got chunks of concrete and I'm going down to one lane on this bridge, and this is what Kimberly Horn says, and this is why I need the money. This is where I need the money, and this is where I mean it today. I talked to Commissioner Johnson today. We had the same discussion. Her bridge technically was, and I say her bridge because we've nicknamed it the Jaffe Patron Bridge on Alamanda, is that Commissioner Johnson's bridge is the single lowest rated bridge on the list. So my question again comes back to the fact is, if I trust FDOT, if we just stick with FDOT, to me, that means that Commissioner Johnson's bridge is the first bridge that needs to be replaced, not the one that's half fallen in the water. So to me,
Sorry, you're right.
And I'm just being honest.
You're right. You're absolutely right.
And
I laugh out of fear. That's a scared laugh. Yes. That's a scared laugh because that shouldn't be the situation we're in. So
correct. And that's why, not to belabor the issue, I feel as if we have this company, we did their due diligence, we've hired them, have them come up with a comprehensive bridge, their second opinion, and see where that takes us. So that's just my point of that.
You know, I wanted to point something else out. If we went ahead with going with Kimley Horn to do this inspection, right now we have an emergency with the Alamanda Bridge, but if we got a comprehensive report and we saw the bridges in order of how strong they were in their lifespan supposedly, we can get that money. That money, if we're looking out into the future, we can get that money. That money's always been available for us to get through the MPO, through the regular MPO Transportation Improvement Plan that comes out every year. You get it, especially now that we have Kimley Horn on board, you get the plans, and you get it in the plan, and you get it into the MPO plan. It's not surtax, it's not FDOT, it's the MPO, and it takes usually 5 years to get your request to the top. But on the bridges that we have time for, we have time to do that, so we'll have time to get that money. I think where the confusions come from is this surtax money and all the different things, the parameters that they put on it. You can do this, you can't do that, you can do this, you can't do that. And that's been confusing the devil out of us for over a year. So, you know, and then with the bridge falling down, so it's all come to this kind of crisis point here, and we're still working on, you know, that surtax money to see if we can do something with combining it so that we don't have to lose it. So we've got all these things going on. I don't think it would be a bad thing, and I hate to spend money, but to have this comprehensive report from Kimley Horn, it would help us to get our plans done for the MPO Transportation Improvement Plan. It would help us to go into the county people to say, look, we need this down the road, but we need this now. How can you help us? And I think it would just give us more ammunition, even though I hate to spend the money.
Commissioner Jaffe, I'd like to propose a motion to award contract to Kimberly Horn and stop kicking the can.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, I just like to say, I don't think the whole idea of kicking this can down the road, I think we all want it. We just want to make sure we're doing it right. And my concern will be, and when we get this report, that I want more information we got from DOT. You know, I don't want the same rehashed report that says everything's fine at Alamanda. Oh, watch for that concrete.
70.7 health index.
Yeah, yeah, so, you know, that's my biggest concern. I would hope, and I guess it's not a good thing to hope for, but that the reports are gonna differ enough that it's gonna raise questions to DOT's efficiency when it comes to inspections of bridges, or what went wrong. But what happens if they're so diverse that we have to then say, which one's right? That's gonna be the question, but, you know, let's not say we're kicking the can down the road, because I think we're trying to take action, we're trying to take, you know, logical and respected advice and follow the best thing. 67,000, whether MPO, Lighthouse Point, it's taxpayers' money one way or the other. But, you know, if you want to move forward with it, I just think our expectations need to be understood of what we're expecting here, because the majority of this thing is really coming from the FDOT's report.
Well, I think that we have enough confidence in the mayor and the administration to make sure that Kimberly Horn does what they're supposed to be doing, and we get the information that we need. They know, we've told them what we need, and why we don't have any confidence in what FDOT has said, apparently. So, you know, that's their marching orders, and they know what they have to do with Kimberly Horn.
But unfortunately, the contract really just defines this, and they're utilizing the inspection reports. And then they're going to perform a visual and tactile review of the readily accessible elements of the bridges. That's exactly the same thing DOT did, but they're using DOT's reports to build from that. So I have 100% faith in our mayor and administration. I don't have 100% faith in Kimberly Horn's information that they're going to be using.
Well, the only thing I'll add also is, and I'm thinking about how, like, to justify the spend in my mind as well, because I think I'm on board with moving this forward, but we have already retained Kimberly Horn to do a comprehensive review of the Alamanda Bridge and give us options for its, I'm going to call it replacement. And somebody can remind me how much that cost, but it cost a whole hell of a lot more than $67,000. I think it was in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, if I recall. Is that correct, John?
Well, 178,000.
Yeah, thank you. I actually was going to say that number because I thought it was that number, but I didn't want to be wrong. So we're kind of in this, we know how much it costs per bridge to get like what you're asking for, Mike, and I don't think we're in a position now to do that for 7 bridges, because that's, you know, north of $1 million, closer to $1.5 million. So I think, you know, at our direction, city administration and the mayor has kind of put together the next best thing, and if it's going to help us buttress our case for getting additional monies, be it federal, state, county, what have you, then, you know, I think it's a it's good use of the American Rescue Plan money, so I'm in favor of it. So we have a motion, we have a second on the floor. Is there any additional discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Oppose? I didn't hear anything on my end, so I'm assuming since there were no nays, that means the motion passed 5-0, so that somebody can correct me.
That's correct.
That's correct.
All right, thank you. All right, well, look forward to getting the report. Motion passes 5-0. Moving on to agenda item number 2, motion to cancel regular city commission meeting. Madam Clerk.
Good evening. Sections 2-82 and 2-83 of the Code of Ordinances authorizes the City Commission to cancel a regular City Commission meeting by motion. City Administration recommends the July 26th meeting be canceled. Any motion to cancel a regular meeting must be approved by an affirmative vote of not less than 4 commissioners. And this vote would need to occur soon so that we have sufficient time to advertise the canceled meeting.
All right, thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Commissioners, discussion.
Make a motion to close or cancel the meeting on July 26th.
I'll second.
We have a motion, we have a second to cancel the regular city commission meeting for July 26th. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Nay. Motion passes 4-1.
Jason, at least we're halfway there. You only canceled 1 instead of 2
Well,
this year.
there's a lot of bridges to fix, but I get it. But anyway, that's my annual, let's continue to work, but I understand. Moving on to agenda item number 3. Motion authorizing participation in the Florida Opiate Allocation and Statewide Resource Response Agreement for settlements with CVS and others. City Attorney Cirillo.
Mr. President, members of the City Commission, this is here for your consideration tonight to authorize the city to participate in some additional settlements that the state has gotten into with distributors or suppliers involved in the opioid industry. Tonight, the request is to authorize the city to execute participation forms. Those are the forms that says, yes, we will participate in these settlements. The commission already agreed the main settlement agreement back in January. And so as each of these settlements come in, we're bringing them to the city commission at its request to authorize the mayor to sign the participation forms. So tonight, there are 4 since the last time we were here, which would believe take it to 7 or 8 different total participations on all these settlements. The first one had, I believe, 2, then with 3 different entities, I believe. Then we had one in February with Endo, and then tonight is CVS, Teva Pharmaceuticals, Allergen, and Walgreens. The total from the settlements is $61,793.70. The reason that this was set up, to explain it to you, is that with 2 different numbers, is that CVS, Teva, and Allergen came in together at 34.7, and so in preparing the agenda materials, we were ready to go with that. Then Walgreens came in on Thursday. So we added it to this agenda, so, it was quicker just to put it on there and add the separate amount. But by approving those participation forms, the city will be entitled to receive these funds as with the other funds. These are to be spent forward-looking on authorized programs dealing with opioid addiction programs. I do not have any additional information on what the county may be proposing, if there is an interlocal agreement for some of the jurisdictions that receive smaller contributions from the settlement, like the city of Lighthouse Point. If there is a proposal to do that, then we will bring that back to you at a future time. I'm not sure if we're going to get any more settlements. I have reason to believe this may be it, but I can't guarantee it. But if we do get more, we'll bring them back to you. Be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Mike,
Commissioner, discussion, go ahead, sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I was opening up the floor. Go ahead, Commissioner Marshall.
Do you know what the settlement was like for the whole thing, for, like, this is...
Billions of dollars.
Billions?
Yeah, if you look at just there's a spreadsheet in there, and it basically, it cut off like the dollar amounts, but you're seeing all the percentages statewide, every single city and every single county, and there's different funds. There's a municipal and county fund, which we're participating in. Then there's a regional fund where if a region provides special social services through entities like BBHC or whatever, they can get a large chunk of that. And in Broward County, it's going to be the county BBHC doesn't have the programs in place, so the county's going to get those regional funds, and then there's a statewide fund as well, and that's through 50 states. So, because there was some nationwide action, but Florida got its share through the Attorney General's office. Other states will get their shares through their settlements with their Attorney General's offices. But I haven't seen a dollar amount, but just looking at how much we got compared to our population, compared to the state as a whole and the country as a whole, it's got to be in the billions.
Additional discussion, commissioners, if not, we'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion authorizing the participation in the Florida opioid allocation and statewide response agreement.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? Motion passes 5-0. Moving on to agenda item number 4, discussion on perpendicular docked boats and floating docks. Mr. Hickey.
Good evening, everyone. Jim Hickey with Calvin Giordano Associates, address 1800 Ella Drive, Fort Lauderdale, for the record. There's a number of items in your backup regarding this. I'm just going to summarize through, and if there's questions, you can definitely let us know. The report is a summary of the status of both perpendicular and floating docks in the city, along with the work that's been completed by staff. There's a lot of information of what we've completed in the last few months. And right now, this evening, we're looking for some policy direction from you all as to whether we amend the code to allow the use of both perpendicular docks, allowing boats to park perpendicularly, it's hard to say at 8 o'clock at night, and as well as floating docks. I think the last time the language was made, changes were made, were back in 2016. And, you can just see from going out in the pictures you show it that the floating docks have really become very popular. Me knowing people that live in Lighthouse Point and Fort Lauderdale, a lot of people add that second dock because either they have, I'm going back to 1980, I call them jet skis, but those types of personal watercrafts, as well as a smaller boat. So if you have your larger boat, a lot of people have a smaller boat if they want to take that out on weekends and not take out the big giant boat if they're going somewhere. So that's kind of what's been happening, and there's been and the backup will look at that. So just to give you some history, back in May 11th, you had had a discussion and you had directed staff to take a look at that. Staff code enforcement went out on May 18th, looked at the south end of the city. We identified 9 boats that were docked perpendicular. Again, we went out, we actually issued those violations to those 9 property owners. And on June 8th, they went out to the north side and found 8 boats that were perpendicularly docked. And those were cited on June 11th. Just as an FYI, of the 17, 7 have complied with the requirements, and we still have 10 pending. We also brought this back to the Marine Advisory Board. They met on August 5th. They had some discussions, and they actually wanted us to do some additional information and really get a full understanding of what was out there and kind of what issues we really have. So based on that, the code went back out, and then we actually looked at all of the docks as well as those that don't meet the side setback. Right now in your code, it actually requires floating docks to meet your side setbacks. So, for example, it couldn't go any farther than your actual structure of your building. So it's either 7.5 or 8, depending on what subdivision your property is. So that provides a little bit of space in between, so that some neighbor doesn't have, if they don't want to see a watercraft, they wouldn't have to see it from their side yard. The analysis is shown below. It's in Table 1 of page 2. And then back on November 4th, we actually brought that information back to the advisory board, and that is a PowerPoint that's in the backup. It is attachment H, I think, from the agenda item that was the Marine Advisory Board on the 5th. So there's a number of different items. Before I leave that too, though, I did want to say that based on the November 5th, the Marine Advisory Board made a motion that the City Commission remove any stipulations that would not allow vessels to be docked in a perpendicular manner on their property, and a motion that the City Commission remove any stipulations that would not allow floating docks in the residential districts of the city. And we talked a little bit about in the analysis, a floating dock is really designed to kind of drive up, and they need a little bit of speed. In a lot of places, the dock is very close to the other boat, so it's very hard for them to use the dock unless it's a perpendicular setup that they utilize. So with that, I just wanted to identify there's a number of attachments. So we actually did some aerial photos in the document as well, just so you could kind of see some examples of those. The applicable code sections are in the backup as well. One of the things I wanted to identify is Section 9045. It does state that unless it's a multifamily or a yacht club, that all docks or docks no vessel shall be anchored or moored other than parallel to the land or seawall at which the vessel is being docked or moored. So that's right now in our Section 9045. So that would be something that if we moved forward with this and allowed them to park perpendicularly, we would go in and make those changes, as well as changes that are set forth in 42-378. Interesting, and actually it was a good read to go back and kind of look at what happened back in 16 and kind of see what changes were made and kind of where they're moving forward. So with that, I think I'll just stop talking and you can ask questions. And that concludes the presentation.
Commissioners, discussion.
I just have one comment before we start a discussion. How do people get away with, like this one that I saw yesterday when I was looking through and I saw it again, how do you get away with building a boat lift perpendicular? I mean, don't you need a permit to put a boat lift up in the first place, or actual real boat lift? And so you have a real boat lift, and it's perpendicular, so they just get a company to come in and put it in, they don't get a permit or anything?
We can verify that. I'd want to check to make sure that they didn't in fact get a permit. But I think especially with the floating docks, there's been some, and back in 16, there wasn't a requirement. I think we were saying back then that a permit wasn't required. We actually did some research, looked at the county, looked at other cities, and realized that these, in fact, need a permit. So they do need a permit, but I think a lot of people don't understand that they need one, right? Because they think, oh, it's like a raft, we'll just plop it out there. I think one of the main reasons for the permit is, A, it's required, but also you want to make sure that they're not putting something out there that's going to block the access to the canal, right? And you want to make sure the boat actually fits on the dock and doesn't kind of stick off the back end of it, thereby not allowing access.
And Sandy, I think on that application, that was modified, because it almost looks like a normal boat lift, and then you have the this whaler going perpendicular, that's not a normal setup. So I'm thinking maybe a boat lift was there, they had a smaller boat and they had it modified.
But it's a boat lift, and
Yes.
it's perpendicular.
Yes, but
You're saying it was
it's just-
installed correctly
It
and
was
maybe.
installed correctly, and then they had a smaller
Change the
boat.
bumps.
Let's make it
Yeah,
work,
change
change
the
the
bumps.
bumps. There you go. Because that's how it appears to me.
Mr. Hickey, can I, just at one point of clarification?
Sure.
So the permit for floating docks, permits are required currently for floating docks, and that's a county requirement?
Well, it's a city requirement, and the county does require a permit as well. And when we looked back in 16, other communities, I specifically Pompano, I think Deerfield, and we looked at Fort Lauderdale. And forgive me, I'm reading from memory from the minutes, because I was not part of this city at that time. And they all required permits. So at that time, we said, well, if the county and other cities are requiring these, this is something that we should do as well. And
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that discussion vaguely, and I guess what I'm wondering is, and I'm not suggesting this one way or another, just to process it all, would we, even if we struck the portion of the city code that required permits for floating docks, a permit would still be required, correct? I mean, just because we got rid of it, if the county requires it, then it's required by the county, correct?
yes.
Okay, all right, that's all I was trying to get at.
I've been on the
All right.
Green Advisory Board for a number of years, and I remember a lot of residents coming up and saying they were told they did not need a permit. And at least 5 residents came up that night. So I think that's part of the problem. Is it required, is it not?
Right, and I think, and that was part of the discussion, and I know when I looked back at the minutes, we actually went back, and the attorney at the time went back and actually did research and said, yes, per Florida statutes, it's treated as this, so therefore it's required. And I think that's just part of the, shall we say, education for people to understand that in fact is a requirement. And I also just think, the proliferation of them, not proliferation, but there's a lot more floating docks now than there are in 2016. I'm not saying that everybody has one, but I think they're a lot more popular than they were, and I think they're a lot less expensive. Even the ones, they have ones that are foam, that are like this, that you can actually, pull a watercraft on. So it's becoming also less expensive for folks to do that too.
I think the issue when it's permitted, we know it goes in the right spot. And if you look at most of these, they're all within the setback. They're outside the setback here, if you want to call it that way, which really then infringes upon your neighboring properties. And you can see some where they're two together, obviously they got together and said, look, this is better, but that's obviously a concern that we have regardless of where we go on this. Permitting, obviously, Broward County has it, we should too, since we want to control it. I would like a little more clarification when you talk about the length of a boat, if we were to allow for perpendicular floating. And I'm going to separate the two. On a floating dock, how far out you're allowed, let's say, what is it, 100 feet? You have 20 or 25 feet from the center line on each side, so a total of 50 feet would always remain open. Is that correct?
Right, so it's a minimum of 25, if it's 100 feet or more width, and this is for floating docks and boat elevators as well, at least 25 feet from the center line of the waterway. For a waterway that's less than 100 feet in width, it would be 20 feet.
Okay.
So that would be a
That's the center
requirement.
line. So your canal would be always open at least 40 feet. Okay. And that's measuring the boat? Is that measuring the dock?
Therein lies the concern, right? Because a dock, of course, if you even, for example, a boat lift, the boat lift has a certain dimension that you can actually measure, and so does the floating dock. But if you have, let's say you have a Boston whaler that's 20 feet, and your floating dock is 18, it's going to hang 2 feet off plus the motor.
Right.
So then it becomes, someone has to go out and measure that to see if it does in fact meet the center line of the. So that's kind of where the whole issue with the floating docks and the perpendicular parking becomes a concern.
I know that we have some with dolphin piles, or, maybe that's where the lift is set up on the dolphin piles, and that can only go up so far, and that's, to me, if we were going to allow any of this would have to be to a point where we're saying nothing can extend past that, i.e. area where the dolphin piling would be, because that's a concern. My other concern, because again, boats come and go too. People move, people sell a boat, get a bigger boat.
Yep.
And they're like, yeah, okay, it's just another 1.5 feet.
Yep.
And it gets bigger, and a lot of people go, it's only a 27 center console. Well, you still got the valve pulpit on the front, then you got the whole engines on the back, there's an extra 3-4 feet, so now it's 31, if it was 27, 31. And obviously, that's a concern. And a bigger concern I thought of with the proliferation that we have with our vacation homes, sort of vacation dock rental, that if you had, say, a 100-foot wide property, you have, what, about 75, 80 feet after setbacks, you could literally stack them up. Instead of renting out your dock for one boat or two boats, it could be 5. Is that something we want? Is that a concern? How do we regulate that if that's a concern?
Right, and that, I neglected to bring that part of it up, right? If we start to allow perpendicular docks, I know, I have friends in Fort Lauderdale that have, they have 5 boats lined up in their backyard because, especially during season, you can rent those out for a lot of money, and then it starts to be more of a commercial thing and not we're allowing this to for someone's extra boat.
Yeah, and we do have issues already with people who do rent out their large docks for a large boat, and, the neighborhood has 7 trucks there every single morning at 5 o'clock in the morning as they go fishing. And, then that has been an issue. So, those are concerns that I would have, is the perpendicular length out into the canal, knowing that, is it easy for a boat to then go down that 40-foot section and still be able to turn around without concerns of boat motors sticking out? Obviously, it's going to be at an angle because they're lifting the boats, once you're semi in the water, basically near it, your engines are going to be up. That's a concern. And how do we control proliferation of the number of boats allowed behind the property? Because look what it's doing to the neighborhood.
But what if you're a boat owner and you have 5 jet skis?
But jet skis are probably a little bit different, I think, here. And I think that, how do we control that as far as people are going to maximize what they can do? We see that in already with the vacation homes. But how would you like to be living next to somebody who has now 5 boats there, some larger boats possibly, depending on the size of your canal? And one of the things that we have always taken into consideration with our codes, that back hedge can't be more than 3 feet by the seaward side, or the land side of your seawall up, and then it gradually moves up towards the building, because you're talking about waterfront property having the views to the sides. Now, how is that going to affect that? And when you start talking about the residents, we're going to be dealing with those residents who are going to be complaining that there's 5 boats there, I can't see the end of the canal anymore, I can only see directly in front of me. And, those are issues I think we have to look at in a big way. I think the floating vessels or floating docks are one thing, because they tend to be a certain level, we can control that, and then, i.e. the size of boat that could go on there. But, number per property, how far they stick out in the water, those are big concerns. And do we allow finger piers now? Okay, so we have little finger piers that go out that add 4 or 5 different, ability for 4 or 5 different boats.
Well, the floating docks usually, I would say, handle about a maximum of about a 25-footer at the most. If you notice, most of these, and Code did a great job on this presentation.
Yeah, they did.
I mean, we don't have all the pictures, but I've seen, I think they did every single canal, and it was a really, really great job. Most of them are the smaller jet skis,
And I think that,
small whalers.
and that probably won't be a
things like
problem, but one of the pieces brought through the Marine Advisory was to get rid of any prevention of perpendicular boats. So it didn't even talk about floating docks in that case. It opened up the whole gamut of things. So that would be my concern. As I said, floating, I think is fine. Perpendicular, we can control the size, can't be any further than this far out from your property. But I'd be concerned about the number of ones you would have there. I mean, it could be just, Club Nautica back there. And then, obviously, do we allow finger piers? Do we start getting bigger here and there? People just then create smaller docks. to have a larger vessel, so it does open up, kind of, I think Paul Menino would always say, the law of unintended consequences, it's going to happen here from this, and I think we need to be very cognizant of that when we start talking about how open we get it.
Yeah, I'm not such a great mariner, but if you had a bigger boat, say 30-foot or 32-foot boat, you wouldn't really want it to float out. Wouldn't that be too big for the floating
Sure.
dock? Or just, because I'm thinking of my canal as a very wide canal, so you could put probably a 40-foot boat sticking out and it wouldn't interfere with that area they're not supposed to be, but the bigger boats, don't they need to be like tied up to a seawall?
Yeah, they're going to be
Not
tied
just
parallel.
floating on a dock?
This is your play toys, your jet skis and your things like that.
Right. Smaller boats and
But are you
jet
talking
skis.
the 40-foot boat being perpendicular or parallel?
No, if you had a 40-foot boat, you would most likely put it parallel to tie it to strongly, not try and run a 40-foot.
But if we allowed finger piers, right,
But it's-
that's just coming out, a dock coming out into the
Oh,
water.
right.
Because if you had your dolphin pilings there.
Oh, okay, right. Yeah, but
But we're
that
not
would,
talking finger piers. I
Well,
don't
I mean,
need
it's
to restrict that, but
kinda-
I get your point.
You start wondering what the next question's going to be, for something.
yeah, so we're not allowing finger piers, because then I could see that wouldn't, because some people buy properties on the wider canals because they have the big boats and they can maneuver them and get them around. They wouldn't want to have things sticking way out.
Right.
Anyway, okay.
And we do allow, on the intercoastal, there's a number of finger piers that,
Right.
I wouldn't even call them finger piers, but piers that are
The
jetting
piers
out
that go out.
into the intercoastal because of the, sand and everything else there. And there's one area near the marina, on that curve, that's allowed perpendicular.
Right.
And I think that was grandfathered in from
Right.
decades and decades ago.
So if we go ahead and try and change this, are we saying that now these people have to get a permit? But they can have these floating docks, but they
Well, they-
still need to have, where do we go with that? I know you.
They should have gotten a permit before,
Say another
is-
thing.
right? I mean, that was the point, I think, is they should have gotten a permit.
Right, but they didn't, but we said that we were sort of saying you didn't have to, but the county says you do, so do we now say we are requiring you to have a permit? We're not saying you can't have the floating dock, but you just have to have a permit. And these.
I just want to understand it, I think when we passed this ordinance back in 2016, since this ordinance was passed, we've always required, the city of Lighthouse Point has always required a permit, it just sounds like people aren't getting them.
So why are all the people saying they told us not?
I don't know I know Commissioner Patron said that, I don't know where that misinformation came from.
Well, John has a response.
Can I clarify something here? In 2016, when it went to the Marine Advisory Board and the City Commission, we knew a permit was required from the state, and during that conversation. The Marine Advisory Board just wanted to require the setbacks for floating docks, but not require a permit, and we brought that to the commission. So, eyes wide open, we never required a permit in Lighthouse Point for floating docks. Now, after this came up recently, we went back to the county environmental, and they said, you do need a permit. Going forward, require permits for floating docks. Don't go backwards. So you don't have to worry about the ones that are already there, but going forward. And they said this is a countywide problem with floating docks. It's not just a Lighthouse Point problem. But now, everybody, if they were told that they didn't need a permit, that was true from our standpoint. But they do need a permit now.
And how are we going to differentiate that from?
That's hard. Very
Very
difficult.
on a floating dock.
Very difficult.
Yeah, and my
But
apologies.
moving forward, we can do that easily.
Right.
Yeah, you're right. But now we've got this whole survey done. But,
Yeah.
but they still, most of these, at least the pictures, I don't know if it's all pictures, almost every single one of them, I shouldn't say, many of them are out of compliance with our code that has been in place for a long time.
All the way over to.
Yeah, that one. Can't tell for this one, but, most of them are. So from a compliance point of view, we could go back and say, look, you need to bring this into compliance. We're not going to force you. Of course, now if they bring it in compliance, they might have to get a permit, if they have to move it, right? Would that be required at that point? If they're
It may
out of
be,
compliance
yeah.
now, yeah. So it'd have to bring that in compliance, that would be an issue. But they still have to be in compliance, and that's where some of our arguments come from. I know it's one just down the street from where I am, where you've got a cul-de-sac issue, and, boats here, boats there, blocking access, egress to, getting in and out of your own dock. But if we're saying moving forward, we have to require a permit, that's easy enough. That we do allow floating docks, and you need a permit to do it, then we could have to regulate the length of it, of the boat, I think has to be the bigger issue, not as much the dock. We can do the dock, but I think the issue is going to be the length of the boat if they're going to be parking perpendicular. And do we want to control the number of boats, or that, that to me, that's going to be a big problem, that once that cat is out of the bag, ain't getting back in.
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Long. I think conceptually, we need to give direction to the city administration about whether conceptually we're open to perpendicular docks, and then express everybody's concerns about that, but letting them know whether we're going to allow it, or we're open to allowing it to begin with, so they could fashion some sort of modification to the ordinance, and then how we're going to regulate it, or how we're going to limit it. I tend to agree with Commissioner Long that I think there needs to be obviously some sort of limit to the length and how far it can stick out. I think that's the easier of the two issues for city administration to resolve. I personally share the issue that Commissioner Long has about regulating the number, and like having, 10, 12 stacked perpendicular docks or vessels or wave runners behind a house, because I do think that, leads to more, encouraging people to rent out their docks, and more traffic behind the homes. So I share that concern, but I think we need to kind of break this off in bite-sized pieces and just hear from the commissioners whether we're open to perpendicular docks, and leave it to administration to figure out how it makes sense to regulate them, because I don't think anybody's up here wants open season on perpendicular docks behind the houses, unless I'm hearing differently.
And when you refer to docks, you're referring to the floating docks? Okay.
Well, I'm talking about perpendicular. I haven't really gone to the floating docks yet, because I think the issues are tied, but I'm just talking about allowing vessels, whether on a floating dock or not, to park perpendicular to a dock.
But
That's what I'm talking about in concept. I mean, I understand your point. 9 times out of 10, what we're seeing is they are parked perpendicular when they are on a floating dock, but I think to kind of do this methodically, we need to just talk about whether we're okay with perpendicular parking to begin with.
Yeah. But in order to do that, then you bring in the part about the finger docks, which is now a permanent structure that's, defined as coming out perpendicularly from your dock.
Well, I don't think anybody wants to allow, unless I'm hearing differently, I don't think anybody wants to allow that.
Correct.
So
The perpendicular would be limited to a floating type structure.
Yeah, so we're talking about floating docks. And Patty, you're like the resident expert here with your years of experience, but you wouldn't have a boat without that if you're trying to park perpendicular. Without if you're on a floating dock, I mean, you get off on that. But you wouldn't have, unless you're jumping off the bow on your lawn, you're going to have some sort of thing sticking out as a finger dock. So if you're going to be parking perpendicular, pretty much would have to have a floating dock, other than a pier dock.
Yes, which we don't want the pier dock, but the floating now.
Right, okay. So we are focused on just the floating dock.
So is there a consensus then to allow perpendicular parking of vessels on floating docks in Lighthouse Point, or see what a ordinance or what an ordinance permitting that with some limitation would look like?
I'm open with the limitation and the existing setbacks.
Well, that's the other thing that's the setbacks are the thing I kind of wanted to talk about, because and I just want to have a discussion about it, because the thing I conceptually have a hard time with is we allow, if it floats, right now in Lighthouse Point, you could have a boat floating on the water from property line to property line. And you don't have to have your boat your boat is allowed to encroach on the setback. And so what I'm struggling with is why, and I understand that's why, it's how it currently is now, where the floating dock needs to be in the setback, but if we can have a boat floating within the setback, why can't we have a floating dock floating within the setback?
So just a point of clarification, it says in the code, floating vessel platforms and floating boat lifts shall comply with the residential side setback requirement. So they're supposed to have the side setback.
He's saying any boat.
Yeah.
Any
A boat. So like 100 foot, on a 100-foot lot, a 100-foot boat could fit there. Regular boat, no floating dock is what he's saying, Jim.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I understand that the floating
No
dock
lift.
currently is drafted,
So-
needs to be in the setback, but my point is,
What-
if there's a vessel in the water not on a floating dock, it can encroach. So what's the and I'm not saying this derogatory, what's the logic in saying that the floating dock, with or without a vessel on it, frankly, because you could just have a floating dock, for recreation purposes, frankly, or something other than your dock to get in and out of the water on, what's the logic in having that have to comply with the side setback when you don't have to actually have the boat, have something floating, another item like a vessel floating in the water be in the setback?
Right. So, and just to clarify, so the code states that boat lifts have to maintain the residential structure side yard setback.
That's different, that's different because that's on the land. I'm not suggesting anything on the land shouldn't be not in the side setback.
Right.
I'm just saying a dock, literally a floating dock. I'm struggling with, now that we've had this on the books for so long and looking at all these pictures, why the floating dock has to comply with the side setback.
I'll give you my opinion. And you bring up a point with people who have a 100-foot lot, have a 100-foot boat, and of course that moves back and forth, creates a problem. We've had problems like that, and we typically tell them you got to deal civilly,
Civil.
and nobody likes that answer, but there's lawsuits goes back and forth. But keep in mind, your floating dock is floating up and down on the water. It is pretty much 90% of them have spuds that go down into the ground. So it is what you call a semi-permanent fixture. So you don't have control or use of that water anymore. Whereas a 100-foot boat, looking at just the bow and the angle of the bow, you could still almost slide underneath it if you had a smaller boat and were trying to get to your dock or maybe your lift, depending on how it was configured. But keep in mind, these floating docks do go up and down on the spuds. Typically, they're not really just tied down, they're actually posted into the ground. So I think you're looking at now more of a dock-type situation where you have a limitation of where you can go within that waterway. That's my opinion.
I don't think there's too many 100-foot boats. There's a
Oh,
few.
we got, I mean, or 80 foot, I mean, that's the other lot size, but
Yeah.
it's funny when you go, wow, and oh, it fits my yard.
Any other thoughts on this, commissioners? I mean, is anybody else open? I'm open to a discussion about allowing the floating docks in the setback, because I get your point, Commissioner Long, but I feel like the floating docks are almost less obtrusive than the boat because they have a lower profile. The boat's sticking out of the water. I feel like the boat takes up more volume if it ran the whole length of your backyard. So, I mean, Commissioner Petrone in particular, you're like, I do kind of view you as a good source for this kind of stuff. How do you feel about not to put you on the spot, but how do you feel about the floating docks and the step back?
I don't have a problem it being property line to property line because that's how the docks are. And yes, the boat, we could have a 100-foot boat. I don't see the difference. So I think it should be allowed. I don't think we should be required to comply to a setback.
You're saying they should do the setback?
No, you do not need a setback. Because you have your dock can go property line to property line.
You can't go.
But you're beyond the dock now.
The dock doesn't the dock have to be 5 feet or 10 feet in from the property line now?
No.
No,
Docks can go property line to property line.
Now
They
it goes,
all can?
yeah, now all the docks go property line to
Right.
property line. It's-
But wait, back up 1 minute, and before we're talking property line to property line. We have to put a limit on how many of these boats. If we're saying that, if we're gonna get away with a setback and say go to property line, we have to put a limit, because somebody can have, like Mike said, I think, they can have 8 or 9 wave runners, and if it gets, people start to hear, oh yeah, you can get the wave runners there, and somebody will rent you a little space here. I mean, you can have wave runners, and they're like worse than boats. I used to have one in the Keys, but they go fast and they're fun, but you don't want to live across from 10 wave runners.
No,
Or live on the canal and take 10 wave runners all at one house, so
I think it's a good point.
especially.
I agree.
saying
I agree with that.
Line to line, we have to put a number.
And I also think you're talking about it sticking out from your dock. It's not just where your dock goes, now you're sticking it out from there. And with water, you have things that float, and you want to at least have some sort of leeway between your properties, getting your boat in and out, having your boat move forward. If, you're right on the property line, you have a boat that's, on a windy day, if you don't have, everything tied down, your boat's moving forward, it hits it, now we got a problem with that. I just think that there's kind of that safety zone, and we're talking anywhere from, 5.5 to 8.5 feet on an average. So it does give that safety zone, it does give that kind of bit of privacy between the two as well. We do have, a 3-foot hedge height, which, some of them have here and some of them don't, and, that's usually something that the individual property owners deal with, but, to not have that setback, I think creates a problem, and you can see it in some of these pictures where people are just, jammed onto each other.
Especially when there's 2 next to each other.
Yeah, and maybe they just sat there and said, look, you're gonna block me or I'm gonna block you, why don't we just put ours right there?
Right, it's interesting, some of them put them right next to each other.
Look at themselves.
They go up and down, yeah, like
They
this,
go up and down,
right
but
here.
they don't go.
No, these won't go side to side, but again, there's no movement.
But if
Whereas
you're-
a boat, you got movement.
But if you're a property owner and you have 100 foot of dock, you should be able to use that 100 foot of dock.
But now we're talking something, and you're using your dock, in this case, you're having floating docks come out here, which now is limiting because you're coming out from that.
You actually have more than 100
And they're
feet that you
stationary.
haven't.
Yeah, so you have maybe, say, a 6 to 8 foot dock coming off your seawall, and now you're adding 8, 9, 10 feet and a floating dock on top of that. So, and you stack all those up with, even small little whalers and other things, and jet skis, wave runners, et cetera, I think you got an issue. And,
Sorry.
oh,
I guess the one thing to think through is if you're going to, so I'm assuming a world where we allow floating docks in the side setbacks, and then there's a boat on it. I'm trying to think if that causes any additional hazard, because, okay, I have 80 foot of waterfront, and I have an 80-foot boat, and it literally goes property line to property line. I don't, but hypothetically. My neighbor then puts a floating dock at his property line with a whaler on it that's going to be perpendicularly parked. They're both maximizing. That boat on the perpendicular dock is now going to have to back out into the canal with my 80-foot, presumably very large vessel right next to it, sticking out into the canal. It's going to be a small boat, so I'm just trying to see if that's any more, if that adds any level of danger, as opposed to if that now perpendicular dock is, 8 feet in. I feel like having the boat perpendicularly parked right next to the 80-foot boat is just as dangerous as having 2 80-foot boats touching each other if we both maximize our dockage. Do you follow that? Does anybody follow that? I mean, I'm just trying to think, having a perpendicular dock up next to your neighbor's boat or other dock is the scenario we could have when they're right on top of each other. And are there any issues associated with that? Does anybody have any concern about that?
Both sides of you, if you have a perpendicular dock on one side at the property line and the other side, and then you have your 80-foot boat and you can't dock it, so you have to sell it and get a little whaler.
and congratulations on your boat, but.
Yeah, no, I don't have, yeah, I wish.
You can't, if you're butted up.
You know, you wouldn't be able to do, no, you wouldn't be able to do that on your own property. I'm just thinking if one neighbor has an 80-foot boat, and if one neighbor has an 80-foot boat, and then the neighbor next to him has a perpendicular dock with a smaller boat parked on it right up against that 80-foot boat. I'm trying to think if that causes any kind of navigable dangers or issues.
Jason, I think your danger comes for the owner like yourself of your 80-foot boat, trying to get in and out without hitting it. You know, if you don't have bow thrusters, which an 80-foot boat would, you know, you're trying to pull out of there, assuming that you're in facing them, and getting in and out is not going to be easy, especially if you have someone on your other end of the opposing property with the same thing in there, that you only have 80 feet. You don't have flex to roll into it for docking. I mean, it's probably easier to get out because if you're in a smaller boat, you're going to hear, you're going to see traffic, but that 80-footer, you're not going to even see in front of the bow that easily. And even go 70, you know, even if you have your 10 feet, 15 feet, you know, it's still a little more difficult docking that boat and getting in and out. So, and ask Patty before you buy the boat. She might know something about boats.
We have enough depth on our canals for your 80-foot boat, so. you have
Yeah,
to
I
get
wish.
canals first.
All right, well, I mean, we're supposed to give some sort of direction to city administration. I guess we should hear from city administration on what kind of direction they're looking for. I tried to frame it unsuccessfully, but what are you all looking for here to take this forward?
I would, so the key, it kind of looks like we're outside of Mr. Marshall here, Commissioner Marshall, we're basically 2-2 on the setbacks, whether we want to look at having a floating dock on the setback, perpendicular floating dock on the setback. One of the thought process that you're talking about having multiple docks or multiple boats, and I know it's add something into our code officials, but you could look at making sure the boat's registered to the owner of the house. That way, you would not have anybody renting out their dock. And the registration for the boat, I know, Tony, just a thought, but you could easily pull up the registration from the fact of what they have for their FL numbers. So just a thought, if you're worried about, and then you can limit it, because there are people already in this photo that have 3 and 4 wave runners.
Right.
So I think you just stick with the word vessel. So whether it's 3 vessels, 2 vessels, 1 vessel, I think is important. And only other thing on the floating dock aspect of it, and the setback, what if it has no vessel on it whatsoever? What if it's just like paddle boards, hydrofoil or something like that? What do you can consider that if there's no boat on it and just a floating dock? So that's the only other thing you haven't addressed that we need some direction on.
I don't have I don't think we should require, I've seen other uses for floating docks other than holding a vessel on it. So I don't feel like we should be a requirement to have a perpendicular vessel on it to allow this. I think you're either going to allow the floating dock or not. That's my opinion.
I got a silly question. This is an actual question. Would we then, by allowing a floating dock that does not require a vessel on it or built for a vessel, you could literally have an extension of your dock just floating, right? That you use, put your lawn chairs on there, barbecue or whatever, or could you? Yes, no?
You could put your.
I mean, you have things that kind of go up and down with the tide. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I know in like Carolina and lake houses, people do that stuff. But is that something you'd want to see or not want to see?
Right. And a point of information, I was at the beach last weekend and someone had basically like a floating dock, but it was like a raft for people to sit on.
Yeah,
And it's just this big giant raft and you can get 4 or 5 people on it.
And if you had modular furniture that
Not
goes
that-
with the thing.
I don't know if you want to do that in a canal.
So I lived
but-
Boca a few weeks ago.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like a 10 by 10.
Absolutely.
It just
Yeah,
pieces
huge.
together. It's like solid as a rock.
Yeah.
Well.
Looking for further direction. I think city administration, we have some information here. We'll put something together and we can bring it back to you folks to look at it. One of our in the future commission meetings.
From-
We have enough.
We,
Yeah,
We have enough.
I think we do.
If we have enough subs-
From the guy that hasn't said anything, because he's not a boating guy, not even close to a boating guy. I don't see the problem with, first off, Mayor, I think you're limiting the amount of boats that you can have is a good thing. I believe the code says you can't rent your dock anyway, so why are we worried about that? And there are people that have signs dock for rent, which is, I think, against the code. Going into the setback, the people we rely on, the advisory board said that they don't have a problem with that. And they're the people we rely on the planning board to tell us what we should do with shade structures. And this is what I believe that, as my understanding is, what the advisory board said. So I would take that direction for the administration, taking all those things into consideration, limit the amount of boats, so you don't have 50 wave runners. And I guess, and I don't know, looking at the pictures, most of these floating docks are for wave runners anyway. So if you have a 50, and I don't know anything about boats, we have a 50-foot lot, we got a 25-foot boat, and two kids want wave runners, so now I have a floating dock that two wave runners are on. At the 39th, and they have a floating dock there at 39th and Lighthouse Point Drive. I don't see a problem with that. You're not penalizing the families, and that's what this community is about, is boating and families. So I believe that that's my 2 cents as a non-boating person.
Clarification, can we control the rental of docks?
You mean, what do you mean, control them? Like, I mean...
Can we prohibit them renting docks out, or dock space out?
I would take a look at that. My sense is that you probably could, because it's uses, but it hasn't been anything that the commission has wanted to look at.
But we've talked about it years ago when we brought up the thing that they had the signs out there, and you said you can control the signs, there's certain, what you can do with that, but we could not control at the time.
I'll
And I
look
don't
at
even
that.
remember with you or Sam or before
Again,
was.
I know
that
it has
we
come to the
cannot-
commission long time ago.
I don't think
And-
we've had any complaints of people
Yeah,
complaining
I
about
would look
rental
back and see what we
boats
said.
on their canals. You might be talking about any specific thing years ago, but nobody's written to me or.
I think that's an
haven't heard any
important thing to
complaints.
check in to, if we can actually prohibit that. I mean, this gets in your vacation rental thing now, what people do with their property, I'm allowed to do it. And that can open up a can of worms. And, unfortunately, I do see a lot, they must have a really large family of 6 wave runners and more, but, I think we can at least look at it and talk about it and go to the next step and figure out what is palatable, what's not palatable with this, and we can deal with the setbacks at that time. But I do have a big concern, just because you still need that ability to be able to move out of your dock, move into your dock without having 2 big walls built up for you.
We'll take a look at that. And we may have given an opinion a long time ago, and we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the opinion was we couldn't control it, and I don't know, Tony, if you remember, but, we've never been able to control the number of people who rent out their docks.
Okay, so city administration has something to work with. We'll probably have the feeling we're going to have to have further discussion on this, but at least maybe we'll have something concrete. I saw a shiny head shake there under the beautiful lights of the chambers there. That's a yes? All right, and a smile I think I see. All right, any further discussion, commissioners, before we close it out? Okay, moving on. Ordinances. Ordinance 2022-0986, second reading, regarding purchasing authority for city administration. City Attorney Cirillo.
Mr. President, members of the City Commission, this is here for a second reading of this ordinance, which would change the purchasing threshold in the current code from $20,000 to $35,000. This was approved on first reading on May 10th, and it's here tonight for second reading and public hearing.
Can I get a motion to read, commissioners?
Motion to read.
Second.
An ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Lighthouse Point, Florida, amending Chapter 2, Administration, Article 6, Finance, Division 2, Purchases, Section 2-181, entitled Purchases Less Than $20,000, and Section 2-182, entitled Purchases of $20,000 or more, to increase the purchasing threshold for purchases by the city administration and the requirement for formal bidding to $35,000, providing for conflict, severability, codification, and an effective date.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is a public hearing. We'll open up the floor to the gallery and then virtually for public hearing. If you would like to address the commission regarding the final passage of this ordinance, please come forward. If you're in the gallery, and if you're online, raise your hand and we will recognize you. All right. I don't see anybody walking to the podium, nor do I know if anybody's actually in the audience other than Mr. Schramm or Mr. Hickey. But seeing nobody walk up in the gallery, anybody online would like to participate in public hearing, raise your hand.
Jason, Mr. Donahue is here. He's behind your view, so
All right.
don't make it like he's not here.
All right. Didn't mean to insult Mr. Donahue. I know he is a big fan of ours. I don't see anybody raising their hand online. Madam Clerk, do you see anybody raising your hand?
No, sir.
All right. Commissioners, discussion? We'll close public hearing officially. Sorry for the record. Now, commissioners, discussion? Hearing none. Someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion, ordinance 2022-0986, to increase the purchasing authority for city administration without competitive bidding to $35,000.
I'll second it.
We have a motion, we have a second by Commissioner Petrone. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Nay. Motion passes 4-1. Moving on, resolutions. Resolution 2022-2435, approving a mutual aid agreement between City of Lighthouse Point and Pompano Beach and the Broward Sheriff's Office regarding Exchange Club Park.
Motion to
Chief
read.
Licata.
Motion to read first, or?
Oh, sorry,
Motion to read.
motion to read.
Give me a second.
Second.
A resolution of the City Commission of the City of Lighthouse Point, Florida, approving a mutual aid agreement between the City of Pompano Beach, the City of Lighthouse Point, and the Broward Sheriff's Office for Exchange Club Park located at the Northeast 24th Street Find property, authorizing the proper city officials to execute the necessary documents and providing for an effective date.
Now, Chief Licata.
Okay, good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. You have before you a resolution approving a mutual aid agreement with the City of Lighthouse Point, City of Pompano Beach, and the Broward Sheriff's Office regarding Exchange Club Park. For the benefit of our new commissioners who were not on the commission 5 years ago, back in 2017, the City of Pompano Beach and the City of Lighthouse Point entered into a 5-year mutual aid agreement for the Lighthouse Point Police Department to provide law enforcement assistance to help deal with nuisance problems, code violations, parking issues, a variety of things at Exchange Club Park, which, as you know, borders the south end of our city. Some of those nuisance issues were affecting residents at Lighthouse Point. That 5-year agreement is expiring this month. The new 5-year mutual aid agreement allows for the extension of 5-year additional periods and extensions to those 5-year agreements upon written agreement by both cities. In order for the Lighthouse Point Police Department to render law enforcement assistance within Exchange Club Park and the surrounding area along the swale, we would have to enter a mutual aid agreement with the City of Pompano Beach. Currently, the City of Pompano Beach has already signed the mutual aid agreement, as BSO has also, and if the City of Lighthouse Point approves the agreement, we are confirming our intent to have the city's police department, our police department, provide those services beyond our jurisdictional boundaries and to provide law enforcement assistance at Exchange Club Park and along the swale where we have historically had some problems. Just to give you Just a little update on the status of the park. As you know, there were many complaints from the people that live along Northeast 24th Street about cars parking along the swale, parties, drinking, loud music, dogs in the park, tents, barbecuing. A lot of those problems have been rectified. Shortly after we entered the agreement, we were working with the Broward Sheriff's Office and the City of Pompano Beach, and they installed some barriers along the swale and put up signs, no parking signs along 24th Street. So they've been able to minimize the numbers of people going to the park and the levels of problems that were there. In fact, I can't think of a call for service that we've had there in the last 6 months from one of our residents about problems at Exchange Club Park. Our officers do drive-throughs 3 times a day. Pompano Beach has assigned a park ranger who spends hours a day at different times a day at the park. Their deputies are also providing extra patrols. And the problem really has been, I believe it's been rectified for the most part because we're given quite a bit of attention to that area. So in your attachments, you have our resolution, you have the City of Pompano Beach's resolution, as well as the mutual aid agreement. And there is no financial impact for our city other than while our officers are out on patrol, they're doing routine stops at the park to make sure that these problems aren't occurring. So I'm recommending that the City Commission consider adopting the resolution approving the mutual aid agreement between the City of Lighthouse Point, the City of Pompano Beach, and the Broward Sheriff's Office at Exchange Club Park.
Commissioners, discussion.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve Resolution 2022-2435, mutual agreement with Pompano.
A motion, is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much, Chief. Moving on to our last agenda item, which is Resolution 2022-2436, awarding the bid and approving agreements with Imperial Electric, CW Fisher Electric, and Universal Electric for on-call electrical contract services. Can we get a motion to read?
Motion to read.
A resolution of the City Commission of the City of Lighthouse Point, Florida, awarding the bid to Imperial Electrical, Inc., Universal Electric of Florida, Inc., and CW Fisher Electric, Inc., and approving the agreements for on-call electrical contractor services, RFP number 2022-003, authorizing the appropriate city officials to execute the agreements and all necessary documents and providing for an effective date.
Mr. Schramm.
Yes, sir. Commission President, Mayor and Commissioners, the city requires the electrical vendor to do certified electrical work. The present contract has expired, so we went out to bid. We received the attached bid shown in your agenda item with the bid amounts for the hourly rates for the certified electrician. They also have other rates as well, but the certified electrician was a good indicator for the contract. Selection committee consisting of myself and City Administrator Levinsky reviewed the proposals and recommends that Imperial Electric be selected as the primary contractor, Universal Electric of Florida as the secondary contractor, and CW Fisher Electric as a tertiary contractor as the most responsible and responsive lowest bidders. The financial impact of the selection will depend on the work orders that we give them. And at this time, we recommend the City Commission adopt the resolution awarding the bid to and approve the agreements with CW Fisher, Imperial, and Universal Electric, and authorize city officials to execute the documents.
Commissioners, discussion. Hearing none, we have a motion to approve.
Motion to approve 2022-2436, awarding
Thank you.
and approving the agreements.
Thank you, Commissioner Marshall. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Johnson, I believe that was. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of our agenda. Now we come to the time for public comments and requests from the floor. If anybody in the gallery who sounds like it's only Mr. Donahue, he's already on his way up. Thank you, sir. Would like to address, give your name, address in 3 minutes, and if you're watching online, now would be the time to raise your hand so we can recognize you, and we will turn to you next. So, Mr. Donahue, the floor is yours.
Matt Donahue, 2820 Northeast 39th Court. I just had to come up and talk that now that the Marine Advisory Board made it to the big leagues and we actually got talking out here, I wanted to make sure that I came up here and kind of brought up some topics. Commissioner Patron obviously was sitting on the board when we went through this. There was impeding the waterway was a huge topic. So making sure that the canals were not impeded by any way by these perpendicular docks was a big discussion. So obviously when we made the recommendation or passed along the information that we had, those were big topics that we wanted to make sure that we were not trying to in any way say that you could just park a bunch of boats over there and it would impede any more of the waterway than you could with a normal vessel. So that was obviously a big topic. As you guys did mention, when you look at some of these things, it was also a concern where you would tell a resident that does, Mr. Marshall made a great point, might have a couple of kids and they want to have the jet skis. I mean, realistically, who wants to be the person that says, well, no, you can't, your kids can't have a jet ski or whatever because you're going to do that, only because we're trying to really regulate the renting of the docks. And I don't think any of us, or I shouldn't say us, any of you all would really want to impose a rule upon a citizen of the Lighthouse Point. What you're really trying to protect the Lighthouse Point residents from is doing something that realistically I was under the impression that you couldn't do already. So the extra renting was the problem. So I think kind of keeping those things in mind about how many vessels, because you could have a big family that does have a lot of kids. If the Van Buskirks were on the water, how many vessels would they have behind their house? So, and
how many 80-foot vessels would they have behind their house?
Not only vessels, but paddle boards and kayaks and all those types of things. So kind of keep those in mind. Commissioner Patron and Commissioner Jaffe also made the point that we talked about. If you have a 100-foot piece of property on the water and you have a 100-foot vessel, there is no regulations to say that you can't pull that 100-foot vessel behind your house. Got to have a good captain to get it in and out, but that's your responsibility that you're assuming. It's really hard with the beams of those vessels. If you're bringing in an 80 or 100-foot vessel, Commissioner Patron, and we did speak about this, that is not a narrow boat. That is quite large, and that does take quite a bit of the canal. So all of those things were in the discussion, and I really feel like we are a boating community, and the commission does talk about this quite a bit. It really is a good opportunity, and the setbacks do cause a little bit of a problem because realistically, you're telling somebody that has a floating vessel, they can use every bit of their land, but the person that does not and using this other one could not. So please keep those in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? I don't see anybody else walking up, so we'll give, if anybody else is there, we'll give them a minute, but I do see one member in Zoom land, Ms. Lindsay Feldman has her hand up, so Madam Clerk, if you could promote Ms. Feldman, state your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Hi, this is Lindsay Feldman, 2701 Northeast 47th Street, and also a member of the Marine Advisory Board. So, like Matt, I wanted to attend to listen to the discussion on perpendicular docks, and he summed up most of what I was going to say, so I won't reiterate it, but I do want to say that there's a lot being discussed today, and I think it kind of falls into 3 topics which have been discussed, and one is if we think we should allow perpendicular docks, which the Marine Advisory Board believes that we should, and what restrictions need to be put in place when that or if that happens, including limits on the length and size of the boat, and maintaining the waterway access, as Matt also mentioned. Then there's a second issue of floating docks, which is related but separate. We also discussed doing some kind of education campaign about floating docks to make sure people knew that if they were putting them at their house, that they do need a permit, maybe like a sign up, like we do for other things, so that people are aware of that as an issue. We also did talk about at the Marine Advisory Board putting some restrictions on floating docks in place since you do need a permit, like maybe not allowing those styrofoam ones that break up really easily, and then you have pieces of styrofoam floating down the canals and trashing the waterways. And then the third issue is the setback issue, and like Matt said, we did discuss that at our meeting, and all agreed that the setback wasn't necessary for floating docks. So I won't say any more on the particular docks, but I did just also want to give my support for the library expansion. We love the Lighthouse Point Library, and I know that the room that they have for children's events is fairly small, and I think because it's so small, they've been limited in the amount of things that they can do. And I know a lot of families go to other libraries in Palm Beach and Broward County because the library just can only do so much here because that room is so small. So I'm fully in support of expansion of the library. And I'm also very excited that my bridge is getting fixed. And so that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I do not see anybody else out in Zoom raising their hand. Madam Clerk, do you see anybody else?
No, sir.
All right, no one else is coming forward in the gallery. So we will close public comments and requests from the floor and turn it over to communications from commissioners. Commissioners, who wants to go first?
I will. Do we have a police union contract yet?
We had negotiations, and we made an offer, the mayor made an offer, and they're taking it back to their membership, and they're going to take it for a vote, but right now, we do not know. We don't have a contract right now.
Okay.
But
it is moving forward?
The ball's in their court.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else, Commissioner Patron?
No.
Commissioner Marshall, anything?
Yes, I have a couple things. Is it possible, either from John or Mike, that we periodically, every other meeting or every meeting, get an update on what's going on with the yacht club? So we can, fend off any questions that any citizens might have about the yacht club, both for them and for us, or, so that we have that information, that's all.
Yeah, I mean, whatever the reports the commission wants, we can give. I think when it was passed, it was 90 days, but that was, I guess, anticipated. We'd have things. I will just tell you that from what we reported 2 weeks ago to now is we got one additional signature page in, and we're still waiting on one more from the yacht club, and at least from my perspective, and there's some logistical things to finish the development agreement to be recorded, but those are things that I can work on with their attorney.
Okay.
As far as plan review, you'd have to talk with John on where that is, but I think it was reported last time that the city was welcoming them to come in for preliminary review. Not sure if that's happened in the last 2 weeks or not. But yes, we can give reports.
Okay, just.
Anytime you ask, I'll tell you what we know.
The rumor mill seems to always win.
Yep.
But if we have facts, then you can get rid of the rumor mill. One other thing that I find interesting, this permit or no permit for the floating docks, and there's other things that I believe that I've seen, somehow we need to come up with, and I stopped at a house when I was campaigning, and the fellow said to me, he lived here many years ago, and there used to be a little white book that people got that had all these little things in it. We're rewriting the code and doing updates. We're all going to be involved in that. Maybe we come up with a booklet that new residents or all the residents, or somehow we put it on the website so that it's easy for people to understand what they can and can't do, or should and shouldn't do. You know, the floating docks, yes, you do need a permit. Or we should, you know, other things, the trash can issue, you know, the trash cans, those things, all those things that came up before the commission over the years that I've witnessed this, that people don't seem to know. They should know, just little things. And it might help the city and the code enforcement people, you know, alleviate some issues that they have. So, just a thought. I guess that's all for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Marshall. Commissioner Johnson, anything?
Just a comment and a quick question. The firehouse is looking fabulous. It's wonderful. Do we have an ETA at all as to when it's going to be viewable and livable?
It's getting close, but we don't have a date right now. There's still a lot of interior work that's going on. Then we got to put our servers in there, because we're gonna move our servers out of here and put it in that secure building, a Category 5 building. So we got to do some paving on the east and west aprons in the streets on both sides of the fire station. Furniture is scheduled to be delivered in June, which is a good thing, but I wouldn't give a specific date. It's going to change.
It looks great, though. It really does. It's beautiful.
Anything else, Commissioner Johnson?
That's all.
Okay. Commissioner Long?
I know, Kyle, you're going to talk about this, right? Okay. Looking forward to that. Just a lot of things happening. I think we're moving things forward. I think we're being a little more aggressive with it, which is good. I like the dialogue we're having, and look forward to keeping this thing moving forward.
I had one, thank you, Commissioner Long. I had one thing. I was contacted again by a resident. I know we talked about this briefly last time about, I think we need to put this in the grand scheme of priorities, but talking about the artificial turf and revisiting that ordinance. So I didn't know if there was any appetite from the commissioners to put that at least as a discussion item on the agenda. I would be open to it. But if I'm the only one, so be it. But I felt like the resident, you know, made some valid points, and, you know, something for potential discussion, as long as administration is comfortable doing so. I know they have a lot of, again, many balls in the air, so I'd want their buy-in to it as well, because I don't want to put more stuff on I know, a very heavy plate, but it is something that's, you know, continually been brought up to me, and so I didn't know if there was any appetite from the other commissioners to add it as a discussion item. I know the agendas are fairly jam-packed these days.
Commissioner Jaffe, I would agree that it's been since 2016 or 18 that was discussed. I think that we actually should revisit that. There's been a lot of advancements in that type of ground cover. I think that I would be in favor of, along with you, to bring that on the agenda, along with, I think that we should get some further discussion about transient rentals going forward, if there's anything that we can do to try to regulate that more or less.
One thing I would ask, prior to any discussion about artificial turf, I'd like, the commission had suggested the commission to do some research on recent studies on the pros and cons of artificial turf, because the information that we were provided 4 years ago, it has changed. It's not exactly as great as we'd think when it comes to the drainage and the issues that we deal with as a city from swale areas and those issues that the lady brought up. So I'd like to do that. And speaking of transient rentals, did Coral Springs ever move forward with any of their concepts?
They did,
Where are
but
they?
I need to see if they passed it on second reading. I know they brought it forward to the commission. I'll double check and see.
Okay, if you'd share that with us, would be great.
And I agree with you, Mr. Marshall, on the artificial turf. I think we should re-examine it.
Yeah, so I mean, I'd like to see, I guess, both those items brought back, but I think brought back at a time when the key to me, and I mean this, is when administration is, yeah, I'd like it brought back at a time where we can get, good due diligence from administration, because, just putting it on an agenda item and saying commissioners discuss, you guys are kind of the front lines, administration, the mayor and John and staff are the front lines and kind of the fact gathering and the information gathering. So, I would even prioritize transient rentals a little ahead of the artificial turf, but I'd like them brought back at a time when, some additional information can be presented to us instead of just discuss. So if administration has a comfort level with that, it doesn't to me have to be the next meeting, but Mr. Levinsky, I see do you have something you wanted to say?
That email that the commissioners received, Jim Hickey did an analysis of the email, and he made a response. And also, he checked with like 4 or 5 other cities what they're doing. So he'd be prepared probably in several weeks to do some analysis, but I think that's be a good job for the city planner to come back to the commission with.
Okay.
That was good deflection.
There you
That was
go.
good. That was good.
Delegation.
We've looked at it with a number of communities, so it's fairly simple to summarize, but, I want to delve into kind of what you all are doing and come up with some analysis and potential recommendations. But I know the city engineer is really not happy with having that in the swales because of the drainage issue. But we can take a look at that. But other communities, especially coastal communities, are really concerned about the percolation of the artificial turf and how it does during floods and king tides and all of those things that we have down here. So anyway, not to give you a full analysis, but we could bring that back to you.
That's all I had, Mayor. Anything?
First and foremost, we just finished our budget. Our department heads coming forward through city administration for the budget. It was definitely an eye-opening process. It was fun, it was exciting, and definitely learned a lot. And I think as I look forward and we move forward over the next 6 weeks and we go over the process, I think that there's definitely some tough decisions we'll all have to make, and looking forward on how best to provide the services and the level of services the citizens and the residents of Lighthouse Point will look to have. So just to keep that in the back of your Rolodex. We have Memorial Day coming up. Thank you for everybody that has served our country and that continues to serve our country. Being a very patriotic city, I think it's important that we mention that. And then lastly, this coming Friday, we do have an employee appreciation luncheon. It's just something I think is important, along with city administration, actually Mr. Levinsky and myself. We sometimes forget all the things that our city staff does for us, whether it's city staff, employees, all the way from our newest hire, which is in the police department, all the way to our most tenured employee, which also happens to be in the police department, Renee. I think it's important that we go ahead and show our appreciation. I invite all of the commissioners, come on out. I'd love to see you guys there. It's starts at 1. We'll start setting up around noon. It's going to be a barbecue. It's going to be catered, but it's just our way, I think, as a city to say thank you to our employees and continuously keep up the great level of service they provide to our residents. So look forward to seeing everybody out there on Friday.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I'm sorry I could not be there in person tonight, and we are adjourned. Have a good night, everybody.
There you go. She got it. Nice job.
You got in there.
She got in there.
The tone is different. It's actually good.
It's less